I am Maya, 32 years old, and my mother just slapped me across the face at our Thanksgiving dinner table. The reason is simple but maddening. I refused to hand over my engagement ring so my younger sister could marry my billionaire fiancé. As my mother raised her hand to strike me a second time, claiming I owed my sister this life, none of them realized my fiancé was standing right behind them. When he caught her wrist mid-air, the entire room froze. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to burn bridges with toxic family members to protect your peace. The sharp, stinging impact of my mother Valerie's palm hitting my left cheek echoed like a gunshot through the dining room. My head snapped back from the force, the sudden violence shattering the festive atmosphere I had worked so hard to create. The Thanksgiving table went completely dead silent. The silver platters of collard greens, candied yams, and honey-baked ham sat untouched, cooling rapidly in the tense air of my own home. I slowly turned my head back to face the woman who had birthed me, feeling the hot red welt blossoming across my skin. Sitting directly across from me, my younger sister Chloe simply smirked. She took a slow, deliberate sip from her crystal mimosa glass, completely unbothered by the assault that had just taken place. Chloe was 25, beautiful in a manufactured way, and had spent her entire life operating under the delusion that everything I earned belonged to her. Today was apparently no exception. "Stop being so stubborn, Maya," Chloe said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "You know you need to hand over that ring. Let us be honest here. Julian obviously prefers a young, vibrant influencer over a 32-year-old stressed-out public relations workaholic who never has time to actually enjoy his money. You are just useful for introductions, but he always wanted me. It is time to step aside." I stared at her, the sheer audacity of her words, temporarily overriding the physical pain in my cheek. I had spent the last decade building my boutique luxury crisis management firm from the ground up, fighting tooth and nail in corporate boardrooms, while Chloe posted filtered photos online and drained our mother's bank accounts. I had introduced Chloe to Julian out of familial obligation, and now she was sitting at my dining table demanding my fiancé of 2 years, as if he were a designer handbag she could simply borrow. Before I could articulate a response, Valerie leaned over the table, her face contorted with a mixture of rage and twisted maternal devotion. "Listen to your sister," she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my face. "You owe her this life, Maya. You have your little business, you have your money. Chloe needs a man who can provide for her properly, and Julian is a billionaire. You are being selfish, hoarding him all to yourself. Take off the ring." I glanced down at my left hand. The custom-designed 5-carat flawless diamond caught the light from the chandelier above us. Julian had spent months working with a private jeweler to create a piece that reflected his commitment to me. It was not just a symbol of his wealth. It was a testament to our shared future, our partnership, and the deep love we had cultivated. The thought of taking it off and handing it to my sister, a woman who had never worked a hard day in her life, filled me with a profound sense of revulsion. The delusion in the room was suffocating. They honestly believed this was a reasonable demand. They had spent my entire childhood treating me as the designated provider, the shield, the scapegoat, while Chloe was the golden child who deserved the world on a silver platter. I was the one who paid for her private school tuition when our mother fell behind on bills. I was the one who funded her initial social media campaigns, hoping she would find a legitimate career path. Instead, she had grown into an entitled parasite, convinced that my achievements were merely stepping stones for her own elevation. But demanding I surrender the man I loved to satisfy Chloe's insatiable greed was a level of entitlement that defied logic. "I am not giving Chloe my fiancé," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "And you will never put your hands on me again." Valerie's eyes narrowed, her pride stung by my defiance. "Do not speak to me like that in my presence," she screamed completely, forgetting that we were standing in the dining room of the home I paid for, eating the food I had purchased and prepared. The sheer lack of gratitude was astounding, but sadly typical of her character. She raised her hand high into the air, her face twisted in fury, preparing to deliver a second harder strike to force me into submission. They thought we were alone in the room. They thought Julian was outside on the patio taking an international business call regarding a new commercial real estate development in downtown Atlanta. They had timed this ambush perfectly, waiting for the exact moment he stepped away to corner me, break my spirit and strip me of my engagement ring before he returned. They operated under the assumption that I would simply fold, that years of emotional conditioning would make me obediently surrender my happiness to maintain the illusion of family peace. What neither Valerie nor Chloe realized was that Julian's call had ended early. He had quietly stepped back through the sliding glass doors and had been standing in the arched doorway of the dining room for the last 2 minutes, witnessing the entire grotesque display of their true nature. As Valerie's hand came sweeping down toward my face with vicious intent, a large, strong hand shot out from the shadows and caught her wrist mid-air in an iron grip. The physical shock of being stopped sent Valerie stumbling backward. She gasped, turning her head to see Julian towering over her. His usual warm, composed demeanor was entirely gone. His dark eyes were cold, fixed on my mother with a level of absolute disgust that sent a visible shiver down her spine. The room was instantly paralyzed. "Do not ever." Julian's voice was low, vibrating with a quiet, lethal anger. "Raise your hand to my future wife again. If you ever attempt to touch her, you will find out exactly what kind of power I wield in this city." He shoved Valerie's wrist away, stepping protectively to my side. His physical presence shifted the entire dynamic of the room. Valerie stumbled back into her chair, her chest heaving, the realization of what she had just done dawning on her face. She had assaulted the fiancé of a billionaire in his plain sight, completely shattering the sophisticated, loving matriarch persona she had carefully performed for him over the past 2 years. Chloe's smug smirk vanished instantly. She set her mimosa down so hard the crystal stem nearly snapped against the table. She scrambled to rearrange her features, replacing her greedy, malicious expression with wide, innocent eyes, trying desperately to salvage the situation now that the man she intended to steal was standing right in front of her. I stood my ground, my hand finding Julian's. The warmth of his grip anchored me. For years, I had conditioned myself to absorb my family's emotional blows, rationalizing their cruelty as just a rough family dynamic. I had invited them to this Thanksgiving dinner, hoping against hope that we could enjoy one peaceful holiday. I had spent 2 days preparing the menu, setting out the fine china, arranging the floral centerpieces to create a welcoming environment. Instead, they had used my hospitality as a staging ground for the most grotesque betrayal I had ever experienced. The silence stretching between us was thick and suffocating. No one moved. The aromatic smell of roasted turkey and savory stuffing clashed violently with the toxic reality unfolding around the table. Valerie was breathing heavily, rubbing her wrist where Julian had caught her, her eyes darting frantically as she processed the collapse of her ambush. Chloe was frozen in her chair, her perfectly manicured hands resting stiffly on the white tablecloth, her mind clearly racing to find a way to manipulate the narrative to her advantage. They had miscalculated entirely. They assumed Julian was just another wealthy man who could be easily swayed by youth and superficial flattery. They did not understand that Julian and I were partners in every sense of the word. We had built our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect, ambition, and unwavering loyalty. He knew exactly who I was, and the immense effort it took to run my crisis management firm. He had seen the late nights, the high-stakes negotiations, the sheer willpower I poured into my career. The idea that he would throw that away for a superficial 25-year-old influencer who possessed neither substance nor loyalty was entirely laughable. But my mother and sister were not laughing. They were trapped in the spotlight of their own horrific behavior. The physical sting on my cheek began to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This was the defining moment. The invisible string of familial obligation that had tethered me to their toxicity for 32 years finally snapped. I looked at Valerie taking in her expensive clothing and the entitled set of her jaw, and then I looked at Chloe, whose eyes were filled with a desperate, calculating panic. They had crossed a line from which there was no return, and the brutal reckoning was only just beginning right now. The deafening silence in the dining room hung in the air for only a fraction of a second before my mother's survival instincts kicked in. I have managed public relations crises for politicians caught in scandals and celebrities facing career-ending allegations, but none of them could pivot as seamlessly as Valerie. The moment she realized her physical intimidation had failed, she completely changed her strategy. She let out a sharp, breathless gasp, her knees suddenly giving out as if the sheer weight of the confrontation had broken her physically. She collapsed onto the hardwood floor right beside the dining table. The thud of her knees hitting the wood was loud, deliberately dramatic. Her hands flew to her face, and instantly she produced loud, body-racking sobs. Julian did not move to help her. He stood perfectly still beside me, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see a muscle jumping near his temple. Valerie peered up at him through her fingers, her chest heaving in an exaggerated display of maternal devastation. "Julian, thank God you are here," she wailed, her voice trembling with manufactured terror. She pointed a shaking finger up at me. "You do not know what she is like. You do not know the things she has been saying to us. We came here just trying to have a peaceful family Thanksgiving, and Maya just snapped. She has been screaming at Chloe all afternoon, violently attacking her character, saying the most vicious, hateful things. She is completely unstable, Julian. She is out of her mind." I watched my mother weep on the floor of my home, observing her performance with a strange clinical detachment. In the past, this kind of gaslighting would have sent me into a frantic spiral of self-defense. I would have cried, pleaded with Julian to believe me, and tied myself in knots trying to prove my sanity against her calculated hysteria. But today, with the stinging heat still radiating across my left cheek, I felt absolutely nothing but a cold analytical focus. I did not say a single word. I simply watched her weave her web of lies, knowing that defending myself would only give her the chaotic reaction she desperately needed to validate her narrative. Valerie continued her performance, clutching the edge of the table as if trying to pull her fragile body upward. She has always been like this, Julian, so jealous, so deeply bitter. We walk on eggshells around her. She invited us here just to torture us because she resents her sister's youth and beauty. I only raised my hand because she was about to lunge at Chloe. I was trying to protect my youngest daughter from her rage. "Please, you have to understand, Maya needs serious psychological help." Julian looked down at Valerie. His expression was a masterclass in stoicism, but I knew him well enough to read the subtle signs of his absolute revulsion. He did not offer her a hand. He did not offer her a word of comfort. He merely stared at her, as if she were a spill on the floor that needed to be cleaned up. Seeing that her mother's tears were not achieving the desired effect, Chloe decided it was time to deploy her own strategy. She pushed her chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floorboards, and stood up. She smoothed down the front of her expensive silk dress, a dress I had paid for 3 months ago, when she claimed she needed an outfit for a job interview she never attended. Chloe stepped around the table, carefully navigating past our weeping mother on the floor, and walked directly toward Julian. She moved with a calculated vulnerability, keeping her eyes wide and shining with unshed tears. She stopped less than a foot away from him, deliberately invading his personal space. I watched as she tilted her head up to look into his eyes, batting her eyelashes in a practiced rhythm she usually reserved for her social media videos. "Julian," Chloe said, her voice dropping to a soft, breathy whisper. "I am so sorry you have to see our family like this. I tried to warn you, I really did. I know you love her, but you do not know the real Maya. You do not know what she is capable of doing to the people who are supposed to mean the most to her." Julian remained perfectly rigid, his eyes locking onto Chloe's with an intensity that would have made a wiser woman step back. But Chloe had always been blinded by her own arrogance. She took a tiny step closer, closing the distance between them until she was almost touching his chest. "She has been lying to you about everything," Chloe continued, her voice dripping with sorrowful concern. "You think she is this brilliant self-made businesswoman who built her crisis management firm through hard work. But that is a complete lie. She built her empire on our ruin. When our father died, he left behind a substantial life insurance policy. It was supposed to take care of my mother. It was supposed to pay for my college education and keep a roof over our heads. We were grieving, we were vulnerable, and Maya took absolute control of the finances. She stole every single penny of our father's life insurance money to fund the startup costs for her public relations firm. My mother let out a loud, confirming sob from the floor, burying her face in her hands. Chloe kept her gaze fixed on Julian, her eyes pleading for him to see her as the tragic heroine of this fabricated family drama. She left us with absolutely nothing, Julian. We were struggling to buy groceries, facing eviction, while Maya was buying tailored suits and renting premium office space in the financial district. She sacrificed her own family, let us live in complete poverty, just so she could climb the corporate ladder and pretend to be a success. We have been suffering in silence for years because we were too ashamed to admit what our own flesh and blood did to us. I stood perfectly still, listening to the most audacious lie my sister had ever constructed. My father had passed away, leaving nothing but a mountain of credit card debt and a second mortgage that my mother had secretly taken out to fund her gambling addiction. There was no life insurance policy. I had built my firm by working 18-hour days, taking out massive small business loans, and eating instant noodles for 3 years straight. I had clawed my way to the top of the industry entirely on my own merit, all while sending half my income back to Valerie and Chloe so they would not lose the house. Hearing Chloe weaponize my sacrifice, twisting it into a story of embezzlement and greed, was breathtaking in its sheer malice. Chloe was not finished. Having dropped her fabricated bombshell, she moved in for the final maneuver. She reached up slowly, her manicured fingers trembling slightly, as she attempted to place her hand flat against Julian's chest. It was a gesture of feigned intimacy, a physical attempt to bridge the gap between them and replace me as his confidant. "Julian, you are a good man," Chloe whispered, her voice barely louder than a breath. "You are successful, you are kind, and you have built an incredible life. But Maya is just using you. She sees you as the ultimate acquisition. She trapped you with this engagement because she knows her firm is struggling and she needs your real estate fortune to maintain her lifestyle. She does not love you. She only loves what you can do for her. You deserve someone who loves you for your heart, someone who is honest and vibrant, someone who will not bring all this dark, toxic energy into your world. Let me help you see the truth." The sheer silence that followed her monologue was heavier than any shout could have been. Chloe stood there, her hand hovering just an inch from the fine fabric of his suit jacket, waiting for him to crumble under the weight of her lies. She truly believed she had won. She believed that no wealthy, respectable man would want to associate himself with a woman accused of stealing from her impoverished family and violently attacking her sister. She thought Julian would drop my hand, tear off his ring, and walk out the door, perhaps taking her with him. Instead, Julian's reaction was swift and devastating. He did not shout, he did not argue. He simply looked down at Chloe's trembling, reaching hand, and then looked her dead in the eyes. The expression on his face was one of absolute, icy disgust. It was the kind of look a person reserves for something vile they have just scraped off the bottom of their shoe. Without a single word, Julian took a deliberate, decisive step backward, completely removing himself from her reach. Chloe's hand dropped awkwardly to her side, hanging in the empty space between them. Julian did not look at my mother sobbing on the floor. He did not look at the untouched Thanksgiving feast. He turned his body slightly and took a step to his right, moving to stand perfectly shoulder to shoulder with me. He reached out and took my left hand, the hand wearing the 5-carat diamond ring they had just demanded I remove, and he laced his fingers tightly through mine. He lifted my hand slightly, pressing a firm, reassuring kiss against my knuckles, his eyes never leaving Chloe's shocked face. His physical alignment with me was an unbreakable wall. It was a silent, powerful condemnation of every lie they had just spoken. He did not need to defend me verbally because his actions communicated everything. He was my partner, my protector, and he saw right through their grotesque performance. Valerie's sobbing hitched, her fake tears drying up as she realized Julian was not falling for the manipulation. Chloe took a stumbling step backward, the color draining from her cheeks as the cold reality of her failure washed over her. She had played her best card, dropped her most destructive lie, and offered herself on a silver platter, and Julian had looked at her with nothing but profound revulsion. The grand illusion they had tried to build was crashing down around them, but the ambush was not over yet. They had brought reinforcements, and the sound of heavy, aggressive footsteps marching down the hallway signaled that the next phase of their orchestrated sabotage was about to begin. The heavy, aggressive footsteps marching down the hardwood hallway shatter the tense, suffocating silence in the dining room. I know that entitled stomping stride anywhere. Before Julian can utter another word to banish my mother and sister from our home, Sarah strides through the arched doorway. Sarah is my older brother Jamal's wife. She enters the room with her chin held high and a smug, self-satisfied smile plastered across her face, completely ignoring the chaotic scene before her. She does not care that my mother is still breathing heavily on the floor, or that Chloe is frozen in total mortification. Jamal trails a few steps behind her, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders hunched and his eyes darting nervously around the room. He has always let Sarah fight his battles, and today is clearly no exception. He refuses to look at me, staring intently at the baseboards instead. Sarah has harbored a deep, simmering resentment toward me since the day she married into this family 5 years ago. She came from a background where she expected to be the wealthy, successful savior of our dynamic. She expected me to be the struggling, dependent younger sister she could pity, the one she could occasionally patronize with unsolicited advice or hand-me-down designer bags. Instead, I built a highly successful luxury crisis management firm. I buy my own properties, I fund my own extravagant lifestyle, and I never ask my older brother for a single dime. My absolute financial independence infuriates her on a primal level. Every holiday, every birthday dinner, she finds a way to slide in passive-aggressive comments about how my ruthless ambition makes me intimidating, or how my wealth is probably just a fragile house of cards waiting to collapse. She completely despises the fact that I do not fit the subservient narrative she constructed for me in her head. Sarah does not even bother to look in my direction. She marches straight toward Julian, her expensive heels clicking sharply against the floorboards, sounding like a ticking clock in the quiet room. She positions herself as the ultimate voice of reason, the deeply concerned sister-in-law stepping in at the last minute to save the wealthy, unsuspecting victim from a terrible, life-ruining mistake. She crosses her arms tightly over her chest, taking a long, dramatic breath, as if she is about to deliver devastating news that absolutely breaks her heart to share. Julian, I am so sorry to interrupt this gathering. Sarah begins, her voice dripping with fake, manufactured sympathy. Jamal and I were just in the kitchen preparing the appetizers, and we could not help but overhear all this shouting. I know Chloe just told you some incredibly hard truths about Maya, and I know it is profoundly difficult to hear. But you need to know the rest of the story. Sarah insists, taking a step closer to him. You need to know exactly who you are planning to marry before she ruins your entire flawless reputation. Julian does not release my hand. His grip remains incredibly firm, radiating a quiet, dangerous heat. He simply turns his dark, piercing gaze from Chloe to Sarah. His face is carved from solid stone, an impenetrable mask of pure authority. He does not offer Sarah a greeting. He does not ask her to explain. He just stands there, an immovable mountain waiting for her to dig her own grave. Sarah takes his stoic silence as an invitation to continue her assault. She takes another eager step forward, lowering her voice into a conspiratorial whisper designed to sound urgent and authentic. My uncle works very high up in the IRS. Julian, she says, her eyes wide with feigned panic. He oversees major corporate audits for the entire Eastern Seaboard. He actually called me this morning because he saw your engagement announcement in the society papers, and he knows I am married to Maya's brother. He wanted to warn our family before the news breaks publicly. Maya's firm is currently under an active, massive federal investigation for corporate embezzlement and severe tax fraud. I hear my mother gasp a sharp intake of breath, but when I glance down at her, the corners of Valerie's mouth are twitching upward in a triumphant smirk. Chloe suddenly stands a little straighter, her previous humiliation melting away into a victorious, predatory smile. They honestly think this is the definitive kill shot. They think Sarah has just handed them the ultimate weapon to sever my relationship permanently. Sarah gains aggressive momentum, her voice growing louder and more confident as she spins her fabricated web of destruction. She is completely bankrupt, Julian, Sarah declares, gesturing wildly toward me. She has been bleeding her own elite clients dry illegally, moving money around offshore accounts just to maintain this pathetic facade of a luxury lifestyle. Her business accounts are completely frozen by the government. The federal agents are preparing to formally indict her by the end of the month. That is the only real reason she accepted your marriage proposal. She does not love you. She is terrified of going to federal prison, and she desperately needs a billionaire to bail her out of her own criminal mess. She is using you as a human shield and a blank check. If you marry her, her federal crimes will immediately become your scandal. Your entire real estate empire will be dragged through the mud. The dining room is practically vibrating with toxic hostile energy. The rich scents of cinnamon, roasted sage, and buttery yeast rolls provide a bizarre, comforting contrast to the sheer malice radiating from the people standing around my table. My mother, my sister, and my sister-in-law are all looking at me with pure, undisguised hatred. They are eagerly waiting for me to shatter into a million pieces. They expect me to start screaming defensively, to start crying hysterically, to fall to my knees and beg Julian to believe me over their coordinated lies. That is exactly how a normal innocent person reacts to sudden catastrophic accusations. But I do not run a normal business, and I am not a normal person. I handle high-stakes corporate crises for a living. I navigate congressional scandals and mitigate tech executive meltdowns before I even drink my morning coffee. I know exactly how to handle a hostile bad faith negotiation. And the very first rule is that you never let the enemy see you sweat. You never react emotionally to their opening bid. You let them play their entire hand, build their false confidence, and then you completely flip the board. I take a slow, deep, grounding breath, centering myself entirely. I do not shed a single tear. I do not raise my voice a fraction of a decibel. I do not even look at Sarah to deny her absurd fictional accusations. Instead, I gently squeeze Julian's hand. He looks down at me, his dark eyes searching my face, and I give him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of absolute reassurance. He understands my silent communication immediately. He steps back half a pace, physically yielding the floor to me. I turn away from Sarah's smug face and walk purposefully over to the mahogany side table where I placed my purse when they first arrived. The entire room watches me in total, breathless silence. The only sound is the soft rustle of my fabric as I move. I reach deeply into my black leather designer bag. My fingers brush past my wallet and my keys until I find exactly what I am looking for. The cold, hard metal of the object feels wonderfully grounding against my skin. I pull my hand out of the bag, firmly holding a sleek silver flash drive between my index and middle fingers. I turn back to face my treacherous family. Valerie is slowly pulling herself up from the floor, leaning heavily against a dining chair, her eyes fixed suspiciously on my hand. Chloe's triumphant smile falters slightly, a sudden flicker of uncertainty crossing her perfectly contoured features. Sarah crosses her arms even tighter, thrusting her chin out, daring me to speak. I walk slowly back to the center of the dining room. I stop right in front of the table, directly across from where Sarah is standing. I hold the silver flash drive out over the center of the table. I let it fall. It hits the polished wood right next to the gravy boat, and the untouched roasted turkey with a sharp, heavy clack that makes my brother Jamal physically jump. I look directly into Sarah's eyes, matching her confident posture with absolute terrifying calm. "I am so glad you brought up federal investigations, Sarah," I say, my voice ringing clear and steady, "because we need to talk about Chloe's offshore accounts." The silence in the dining room is absolute heavy enough to crush bone. Sarah's mouth falls open, her aggressive posture instantly crumbling into wide-eyed panic. She glances at Jamal, but my brother is staring at the silver drive as if it is a live grenade. Valerie cannot even form a coherent sentence. She just makes a low, choking sound in the back of her throat. I do not wait for them to recover. I do not stay to watch them scramble for excuses. I simply turn on my heel. Julian's hand rests warmly on the small of my back, guiding me toward the front door. We leave the untouched roasted turkey, the fine china, and my treacherous family behind. The heavy oak door clicks shut, sealing them inside the prison of their own making. The ride back to our penthouse is quiet. It is not an uncomfortable silence, but the shared, steady calm of two people who have just survived a burning building. Julian does not ask questions. He pours me a glass of water when we get home, holds me close, and we go to sleep. I foolishly believe the worst is over. I assume that dropping the flash drive will keep them paralyzed with fear. I underestimate the sheer, unadulterated desperation of a family backed into a corner. They know I have the upper hand, so they decide to burn the entire narrative to the ground before I can speak. The following morning begins not with the gentle chime of my alarm clock, but with the aggressive, relentless vibrating of my phone against the mahogany nightstand. It is a continuous buzzing hum that vibrates right through the wood. I open my eyes, disoriented, squinting at the bright morning light, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Julian is already awake, standing near the window with his phone pressed to his ear, his voice a low, furious rumble. I reach for my device. The screen is a waterfall of notifications. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of text messages, and thousands of social media alerts. My heart rate spikes. In the crisis management industry, a phone acting like this means someone's career is actively imploding. Today, that someone is me. I open a message from my lead tech analyst, Marcus. It contains a single link and a brief warning. "You need to see this immediately," he writes. "Do not respond to anything yet." I tap the link. The screen transitions to a popular social media platform, loading a video that has already amassed hundreds of thousands of views. My blood turns to ice. It is Chloe. She is sitting on the floor of what looks like a stark, empty room, wearing an oversized, faded gray sweater that swallows her frame, making her look incredibly small and fragile. Her hair is messy, pulled into a hasty bun, a stark departure from her usual meticulously styled influencer aesthetic. But it is her face that makes my breath catch in my throat. A massive purple and yellowish-green bruise covers the entire left side of her cheek and jawline. It is a masterpiece of theatrical stage makeup, blended perfectly to look like a fresh, brutal contusion. Her eyes are red-rimmed and swimming with tears. She stares directly into the camera, her lower lip quivering with practiced vulnerability. "I never wanted to take this public," Chloe says, in the video, her voice breaking on cue. "I always believed family should protect family, but I cannot stay silent anymore. I am terrified, and I need people to know the truth before she tries to destroy my life completely." A single tear rolls down her unbruised cheek. Yesterday at our family Thanksgiving dinner, my older sister Maya violently attacked me. I watch in pure, horrified fascination as Chloe weaves a masterful tapestry of absolute lies. She tells her audience that I have always been deeply jealous of her youth. She claims that Julian and I have a toxic, loveless arrangement, and that Julian has been secretly trying to leave me for her. According to Chloe, when Julian finally confessed his true feelings yesterday, I flew into an uncontrollable psychotic rage. She describes in vivid, horrifying detail how I allegedly grabbed her by the hair, threw her to the ground, and repeatedly struck her across the face while screaming that I would ruin her if she ever looked at my wealthy fiancé again. She claims Julian had to physically pull me off her to save her life. "She is a monster." Chloe sobs into the camera, burying her face in her hands. She uses her PR firm to crush anyone who gets in her way, and she told me she would use all her resources to bury me if I went to the police. I have nothing. I am just a normal girl, and she has billions of dollars behind her. Please, if something happens to me, you know who did it. The video ends. I sit frozen in the bed, my mind racing to catch up with the sheer scale of the sabotage. They did not just try to smear my name in private, they are trying to incite a public witch hunt. I scroll down to the comment section, and the true depth of the orchestration reveals itself. Pinned right at the top of the thousands of outraged comments is a verified response from Sarah. "I am Jamal's wife, Maya's sister-in-law." Sarah's comment reads, I was in the house when it happened. Everything Chloe is saying is absolutely true. Maya has a long history of violent, unstable behavior, and she uses her wealth to silence her victims. We had to rush Chloe out of the house for her own safety. We are praying for justice. Please share this to protect other innocent people from Maya's wrath. The digital breadcrumbs are perfectly laid out. Sarah has not only verified the fabricated assault, but she has actively tagged local news stations, national gossip blogs, and several prominent social justice accounts. She knows exactly how the internet outrage machine functions. She is feeding it the perfect narrative. A wealthy, powerful, ruthless corporate woman attacking her innocent, defenseless younger sister over a billionaire man. It is a story designed to ignite immediate visceral anger, and it is working perfectly. My notifications continue to explode. The video is being shared exponentially. I click over to the trending topics. My name is already climbing the charts, accompanied by hashtags demanding my immediate arrest and the boycotting of my crisis management firm. People who do not know me, who have never met me, are flooding my business profiles with one-star reviews. They are leaving vicious, hateful messages on my company's public pages, calling me a sociopath, an abuser, a corporate tyrant who buys her way out of criminal charges. The irony is blinding. I have spent my entire career putting out massive digital fires for high-profile clients, shielding them from the very mob that is currently marching toward my front door. I know exactly how fast a digital wildfire can consume a lifetime of hard work. The internet does not wait for facts. It does not ask for police reports or medical records. It demands immediate blood, and Chloe has painted a massive target squarely on my back. I look up as Julian walks over to the bed. His face is a mask of pure, concentrated fury. He has clearly just seen the video. His knuckles are white as he grips his phone. "They are trying to destroy you," he says, his voice a low, dangerous rumble. "My security team is already coordinating with our lawyers. We are shutting this down. We are burying them in defamation suits before noon." I shake my head, throwing the blankets off and standing up. My initial shock is evaporating rapidly, replaced by a cold, calculating professional focus. Suing them right now is exactly what they want us to do, I tell him, my mind already organizing the counteroffensive. If a billionaire sues a supposedly battered, penniless young girl within hours of her speaking out, it only validates her narrative. It makes us look like the oppressive Goliath trying to crush the innocent David. The internet will completely martyr her, and my firm will never recover from the optics. Then what do we do? Julian asks, his eyes locked on mine. Because I will not stand by and let them orchestrate this kind of character assassination. We do what I do best, I say, walking toward my closet to grab a suit. I strip away the emotion. I strip away the fact that this is my mother and my sister and my brother's wife. They are no longer family. They are a hostile entity actively attacking my enterprise. I am going to my office. We need to track the origin of the bot accounts amplifying this video. We need to lock down our client list. They want a public relations war. They have absolutely no idea what they have just started. I throw on a tailored black suit, my armor for the day. My phone rings again. This time, it is a private number. I answer it on speakerphone while buttoning my jacket. It is my lead legal counsel at the firm. "Maya, we have a massive problem," he says, his voice tight with anxiety. "The video is crossing over into mainstream media. We are getting calls from major news networks asking for comment. But that is not the worst part. Your biggest client just called the emergency line." My stomach drops. The high-profile NBA star whose brand I have spent 2 years meticulously rehabilitating. He cannot afford to be associated with an unhinged, violent PR rep. He is threatening to pull his contract by the end of the day if we do not publicly disprove these allegations immediately. If he leaves, a domino effect will follow. Every major client will drop my firm to avoid the collateral damage. My family knows this. They are systematically cutting off my oxygen supply, trying to starve my business to death, so I will be forced to crawl back to them and surrender. "Tell him to give me 48 hours, I instruct my lawyer, keeping my voice perfectly steady. "I will handle this." I end the call and grab my briefcase. Julian is watching me, his presence a solid, unwavering pillar of support in the middle of this engineered hurricane. The war has officially moved from the dining room to the digital arena, and my entire life's work is hanging in the balance. I step out of the bedroom ready to walk into the fire, knowing that the only way to survive a smear campaign of this magnitude is to expose the architects hiding behind the flames. The ride to my crisis management firm in the financial district was a masterclass in silent efficiency. Julian drove his black SUV with terrifying precision, his jaw set, his eyes focused entirely on the road ahead. I sat in the passenger seat, my tablet open on my lap, already deploying the first phase of my digital containment protocol. I was isolating the bot network Sarah had weaponized, tracing the IP addresses of the coordinated accounts currently flooding my firm's public pages with fabricated outrage. By the time Julian parked in the underground VIP garage, I had already identified 3 paid troll farms operating out of Eastern Europe. Sarah had not just posted a video, she had funded a targeted digital assassination. We bypassed the main lobby and took the private executive elevator directly to the top floor. The moment the steel doors slid open, the chaotic symphony of a corporate meltdown assaulted my ears. The usually pristine, hushed atmosphere of my firm was gone. Dozens of phones were ringing simultaneously, a frantic, overlapping chorus of panic. My junior associates were sprinting between glass-walled conference rooms, clutching tablets and looking utterly terrified. When they saw me step out of the elevator with Julian right beside me, a sudden wave of silence rippled through the bullpen. They expected me to look defeated. They expected a woman broken by the weight of a viral scandal. I did not give them that satisfaction. I squared my shoulders, adjusted the lapels of my black suit, and walked straight through the center of the room with the commanding stride of a general stepping onto a battlefield. I want all public comment sections disabled immediately, I ordered, my voice projecting clearly over the remaining ringing phones. Divert all press inquiries to the secondary legal firewall. Nobody gives a quote. Nobody confirms a single detail. Do not engage with the outrage. Let them scream into an empty void until I say otherwise. My team scrambled to execute the commands. I pushed open the heavy glass door to my corner office, gesturing for Julian to follow. Before the door even clicked shut behind us, the red light on my private encrypted secure line began flashing violently. Only 5 people in the world had that direct number. One of them was my lead defense attorney. Another was my highest-paying client. I picked up the receiver and hit the speaker button. The frantic, booming voice of DeAndre Vance echoed through the spacious office. DeAndre was the top-scoring shooting guard in the NBA, a global brand ambassador worth hundreds of millions, and a man whose career I had single-handedly salvaged 2 years ago after a disastrous Las Vegas altercation. "Maya, what the hell is going on?" DeAndre shouted, the panic clear in his tone. "My agent just sent me this video of your sister. It has 5 million views, Maya. 5 million. They are calling you a violent sociopath. They are tagging my sponsors. My sneaker deal is up for renewal next month. I cannot have my brand attached to someone who beats up their own family over a guy. My management team is telling me to terminate our contract right now and issue a public statement distancing myself from you." I leaned forward, resting my palms flat against the cool surface of my mahogany desk. I kept my voice perfectly level, projecting absolute, unshakable authority. "DeAndre, take a deep breath and listen to me very carefully," I said. 2 years ago, when the police had you in handcuffs in the basement of that casino, who was the very first person you called?" There was a heavy pause on the other end of the line. "You," he muttered. "And what did I do?" I asked, my tone sharp and uncompromising. "You made the footage disappear. You controlled the narrative. You kept me out of jail and saved my endorsements." "Exactly," I replied. "I saved your career when you were completely guilty. Do you honestly think I cannot save my own career when I am completely innocent?" The woman in that video is my estranged sister. She's using stage makeup to fake a bruise because she wants to extract a financial settlement from me. This is a coordinated, malicious extortion attempt, and my legal team is currently preparing the federal lawsuits to dismantle her entire life. DeAndre exhaled loudly, the panic slightly receding from his voice. "Man, the internet is ripping you to shreds right now. It looks incredibly bad." "It looks exactly how they designed it to look," I corrected him. "I am not asking you to blindly defend me in public. I am asking you to sit tight, say absolutely nothing to the press, and give me 48 hours to completely flip the board. If I have not cleared my name and exposed her fraud by Friday morning, you can tear up our contract and walk away. But if you jump ship now, you will be the guy who abandoned the woman who saved his life over a fake internet rumor. Do we have a deal?" Another long pause stretched across the line. 48 hours. Maya DeAndre finally agreed. But if this gets worse, my hands are tied. I ended the call and let out a slow, controlled breath. I had bought the time I needed, but the clock was ticking down fast. Julian moved closer, his presence a steady anchor in the room. He reached out, his knuckles brushing gently against my shoulder. "You handled that perfectly," he said quietly. "But we cannot just play defense. We need to strike back." I walked around the desk to sit in my leather chair, opening my primary computer terminal. "I need to review the formal charges before we strike," I told him. "If Chloe actually went to the police and filed a false assault report, she has committed a crime. But I need to know exactly what leverage they think they hold." I glanced down at the physical console of my desk phone. The message waiting indicator light was blinking a steady, rhythmic crimson. It was a voicemail left on my private office line at 3 in the morning hours, before Chloe posted her tearful performance for the world to see. I pressed the playback button. The audio engaged, filling my office with the smug, chillingly confident voice of my mother, Valerie. "Hello?" Maya Valerie's voice purred through the speaker. Her tone lacked any trace of the weeping, hysterical woman who had collapsed on my dining room floor yesterday. She sounded calculated, victorious, and completely ruthless. "I assume by now you have seen the lovely little video your sister recorded. If you have not, you will soon. The entire internet is going to see it. It is truly amazing how quickly people will believe a crying girl with a bruised face." I froze my hand, hovering over the keyboard. Julian stepped up directly beside my chair, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the speakerphone. "You thought you could embarrass us and just walk away." Valerie continued, a wicked sneer, clearly audible in her words. "You thought your little flash drive trick would scare us. But you underestimated your family, Maya. We are not leaving empty-handed." "Chloe went to the police station at midnight. She filed a formal assault charge against you. We have medical documentation of her injuries, courtesy of a doctor friend of Sarah's. The police are probably drafting a warrant for your arrest right now. Your business is going to burn to the ground. Your wealthy clients will leave you in droves. You will be absolutely nothing by the end of the week." The voicemail crackled slightly, Valerie taking a deliberate pause to let her threat sink in before delivering her ultimate ultimatum. "But we are reasonable people, Maya," she said, her voice dropping into a dark, extortive whisper. "We are willing to make all of this go away. We are willing to issue a public retraction claiming it was all a terrible misunderstanding. Chloe will drop the criminal assault charges she just filed against you. We will delete the video and call off the dogs. But it comes with a price." I locked eyes with Julian. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of what was coming hung in the air between us. "First, you are going to call off this ridiculous wedding," Valerie demanded. "You are going to give Julian to your sister. He clearly prefers a younger woman anyway, and you are going to step aside and facilitate that transition smoothly. Second, you are going to sign the controlling shares of your public relations firm over to your brother Jamal. He deserves to run a real business, and you are going to hand it to him on a silver platter. You have until Friday at noon to transfer the ownership documents and publicly announce your breakup with Julian. Do it by Friday, or we let the internet completely ruin you. We will watch you go to prison, Maya. The choice is yours." The automated system announced the end of the message. The silence that followed was suffocating, heavy with the magnitude of the criminal act we had just witnessed. They had not just launched a smear campaign. They had actively conspired to commit federal extortion. They had weaponized the legal system, falsified medical records, and explicitly laid out their blackmail demands on a recorded corporate line. I slowly turned my chair to look at Julian. The stoic, controlled billionaire I had fallen in love with was gone. In his place stood a man radiating pure, lethal danger. The muscle in his jaw was ticking violently. His dark eyes were completely black, burning with a rage so profound it seemed to lower the temperature in the room. He had witnessed their greed and their gaslighting at Thanksgiving, but hearing my mother explicitly demand that I hand him over to Chloe like a piece of property, hearing her threaten my freedom and my life's work, had pushed him past the point of no return. "They just threatened your freedom," Julian said, his voice dropping an entire octave, vibrating with raw, unfiltered menace. "They forged medical documents. They filed a false police report. They are attempting to extort you for your company and your relationship. They crossed the line from toxic family drama straight into federal felonies." He leaned down, placing both hands flat on my desk, bringing his face level with mine. "I was going to let your lawyers handle the defamation," Julian whispered, his eyes locked onto mine. "But I am not leaving this to civil court anymore. I am going to completely dismantle them. I am going to buy the building your mother lives in and evict her. I am going to make sure your brother never works in this city again. I am going to crush them until there is absolutely nothing left but dust." I looked at the furious, protective man standing before me, and I did not feel fear. I felt an overwhelming surge of vindication. Valerie, Chloe. Sarah and Jamal thought they had backed me into an inescapable corner. They thought they had checkmated me with their viral video and their fabricated police reports. They thought my pride and my fear of public humiliation would force me to surrender my empire and my future husband. They were completely wrong. I reached out and gently placed my hand over Julian's white-knuckled fist. I let a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. "You do not need to buy her building, Julian," I said, my voice calm, precise, and laced with absolute certainty. "I am not going to hide. I am not going to negotiate. I am going to let them think they are winning right up until the final second." They wanted a public execution, but they forgot one crucial detail. I picked up the physical phone receiver, hitting the button to save the extortion voicemail to my secure, encrypted cloud server. "I handle hostage situations for a living," I told him, looking at the saved digital file. "And I never negotiate with terrorists. It is time to leak the contents of that silver flash drive. Let us show the world exactly where Chloe's offshore money comes from." The glass doors of my firm slide open, and the chaotic symphony of a corporate crisis washes over me. My staff operates at maximum capacity, phones ringing endlessly as damage control protocols initiate. I walk in, not as a victim, but as the commanding officer of an elite crisis management agency. For a decade, I have salvaged disgraced politicians, insulated billionaires from federal indictments, and completely erased digital smear campaigns. Extorting me using amateur social media tactics is like bringing a water balloon to a raging inferno. I built this industry from the ground up, and my family completely underestimated the machine they attacked. I stride to the main conference room, the glass-walled nerve center of my operation. My lead tech analyst, Marcus, is already waiting. He has 4 monitors illuminated with real-time data streams tracking the viral spread of Chloe's fabricated assault video. Marcus is the best digital forensics expert in the country. I poached him from a federal task force 3 years ago, precisely for moments like this. He looks up as I drop my briefcase onto the table, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "The video is gaining traction at an unprecedented rate," Marcus says, bringing up a heat map showing engagement spikes. The organic engagement metrics are completely wrong. The initial explosion of views did not come from actual users sharing it. It was artificially amplified within the first 20 minutes of uploading. I lean over his shoulder, analyzing the scrolling code. "They used a bot farm," I confirm, my voice sharp and analytical. "Chloe lacks the technical capability to coordinate a synchronized digital assault. Someone bought a targeted amplification package. Show me the negative reviews hitting our business pages." Marcus taps a key and a cascading list of 1-star reviews floods the monitor. They are rolling in by the hundreds, burying my firm's reputation under generic hateful accusations. They are leaving comments calling you a violent sociopath, demanding your corporate clients drop you immediately, Marcus explains. The syntax is incredibly repetitive. We are seeing the exact same phrases pasted across multiple platforms. Justice for Chloe. Boycott Maya, corporate tyrant. It is a textbook coordinated harassment campaign. Isolate the source I command, pacing the length of the conference room. I do not care how many dummy accounts they are using. Peel back the proxy servers. Track the initial payment method used to purchase the amplification. They bought a cheap digital hit job, and cheap hit jobs leave massive digital footprints. I want the IP addresses of the primary coordinating accounts. Trace the original deployment signal. Marcus cracks his knuckles, a grim smile spreading across his face. Already on it, boss. They routed the traffic through basic virtual private networks thinking it would mask their location. But they used a third-rate service out of Eastern Europe. The encryption is practically non-existent. I watch as Marcus initiates a deep packet inspection, his software tearing through the false digital layers. The clicking of his keyboard is the only sound in the room. In crisis management, information is the absolute weapon. My mother and sister relied on emotional manipulation, banking on the fact that public sympathy would side with a crying girl. They assumed my wealth automatically cast me as the calculating villain. But they forgot that the digital realm operates purely on hard facts. Code does not lie. Data does not cry. I have penetrated the proxy layers, Marcus announces, his voice tight with concentration. The bot farm was triggered by a command signal originating from two specific, localized IP addresses. They did not even bother to mask the source of the payment. The transaction was processed using a standard credit card linked to a residential internet service provider and a corporate network. Bring the physical addresses up on the main screen, I order, stepping closer to the monitor. A map of the city appears, a red crosshair rapidly zeroing in on a suburban neighborhood I recognize instantly. The address flashes across the screen in bold white letters. It is Sarah and Jamal's home address. The second crosshair locks onto a commercial building downtown, pinpointing the exact suite number of the accounting firm where my brother Jamal works as a mid-level financial manager. A cold, deeply satisfying rush of adrenaline floods my veins. The trap is perfectly set. Sarah and Jamal are the architects of the digital smear campaign. Sarah, with her bitter resentment and her insatiable need to tear me down, had orchestrated the bot farm from her living room couch. Jamal, spineless and utterly complicit, had logged into his work computer to help amplify the attacks using his corporate network to leave fake, damaging reviews on my firm's public profiles. They were attempting to destroy my multi-million-dollar enterprise using the Wi-Fi I pay for. I had financially bailed Jamal out of massive credit card debt 2 years ago, saving his house from foreclosure. This digital assassination attempt was being launched from the very home my money had secured. They are incredibly stupid, Marcus remarks, shaking his head in sheer disbelief. They left a direct, undeniable digital trail, linking them to a coordinated campaign of corporate sabotage and defamation. We can hand this data packet directly to the Cybercrimes Division. This is a slam-dunk federal offense. Do not package it for the authorities yet, I reply, my mind already mapping out the next 5 moves of this lethal chess match. I do not want them arrested right now. I want them cornered. I want them to feel the absolute terror of knowing I hold the keys to their destruction, just like they tried to do to me. I reach into my jacket pocket, my fingers brushing against the cold silver flash drive I had retrieved from the dining table last night, after Julian and I walked out. The drive contains the complete, unredacted financial history of Chloe's offshore accounts, exposing the massive illegal wire transfers Valerie had orchestrated using my forged signature. I have the digital breadcrumbs proving Sarah and Jamal's defamation, and I have the financial records proving Valerie and Chloe's fraud. My family has unwittingly handed me the precise instruments required for their total annihilation. Marcus, I say, my tone carrying an icy, lethal calm. Draft a comprehensive dossier. Compile the IP logs, the bot farm purchase receipts, the geolocated signals, and the exact timestamps matching Sarah and Jamal's devices. Then I want you to crack this flash drive. We are going to merge the digital sabotage evidence with the financial embezzlement records. We are building a master file. Marcus nods, grabbing the silver drive. Consider it done. They will not know what hit them. I turn to walk toward my private office, ready to initiate the final sequence of my counterattack. I am prepared to crush my family's extortion attempt. I am ready to dismantle their lies and salt the earth behind them. Before my hand touches the glass door, my cell phone vibrates in my pocket. It is an alert tone reserved exclusively for Julian. I pull it out, expecting an update on the press barricade outside his corporate headquarters. Instead, the screen displays a single, urgent text message that makes the breath completely vanish from my lungs. Maya Julian's message reads, "We have a massive problem. My parents just saw Chloe's video on the morning news. They are demanding an emergency family meeting at their estate right now." I stare at the glowing words, a cold dread pooling in my stomach. Julian's parents, Richard and Eleanor, are not just incredibly wealthy. They are the apex of high society, commanding an old money real estate empire built on absolute, unshakable respectability. They are ruthlessly conservative, fiercely protective of their legacy, and completely intolerant of public scandal. They have never fully approved of my self-made background, viewing my crisis management career as slightly vulgar, constantly brushing against the dirty, scandalous side of the elite world. They tolerate me because Julian loves me, and because I have always maintained a flawless public image. Now their future daughter-in-law is the violent viral star of a horrific family assault scandal. My mother and sister did not just threaten my firm. They have directly threatened Julian's family legacy. The battle has escalated beyond my control, and I am walking straight into a highly orchestrated, brutal high society execution. Julian does not say a single word as we take the private elevator down to the garage. The silence between us is no longer the calm focus of two professionals preparing for a corporate battle. It is the heavy, loaded quiet of a son preparing to go to war with his own blood. He grips the steering wheel of the black SUV so tightly his knuckles are completely white, pushing the heavy vehicle through the city traffic with aggressive, terrifying precision. I keep my eyes perfectly fixed on the road, running through every possible scenario in my mind. The Thornton family estate is located in a highly exclusive, heavily guarded community just outside the city limits. It is a pristine fortress of old money and aristocratic pride. Richard and Vivian Thornton do not tolerate public scandals. They do not engage in public messes. They operate entirely in the shadows, pulling strings behind closed doors. If they summon Julian for an immediate emergency meeting, it means they consider me a liability. They want to cut the infection out before it spreads to their immaculate reputation. I think about my own family as the miles blur past the window. My mother's voicemail plays on a loop in my head. Her venomous demand that I surrender my firm to Jamal, the very firm I built from nothing with my own blood and sweat, burns like acid. The idea that she would stoop to destroying my life just to secure unearned wealth for her favorite children is a profound betrayal, but one I am fully prepared to annihilate. The massive wrought iron gates of the Thornton estate swing open smoothly as Julian's vehicle approaches. We drive up the long, winding driveway flanked by perfectly manicured oak trees. The sprawling lawns are meticulously maintained, projecting an aura of untouchable prestige that the Thornton family guards with their lives. Every blade of grass, every marble statue in the circular driveway is designed to intimidate outsiders. I refuse to be intimidated. I check my tablet one last time, ensuring Marcus has completed the master file of my digital counterstrike. The data is secured. The undeniable evidence of Sarah and Jamal's bot farm conspiracy is safely locked in the cloud. The main house looms ahead, a sprawling stone mansion that looks more like a museum than a home. Julian parks the car, abruptly shutting off the engine. He turns to me, his dark eyes intense. "My parents are going to be ruthless," he warns, his voice low and tight. "They care about the family name above everything else. Do not let them intimidate you. I will not let them push you out." I offer him a tight, reassuring nod. I have handled angry billionaires before. Let us just get this over with. We walk up the wide stone steps, and the heavy oak front door is immediately opened by a uniformed butler. He bows his head slightly, murmuring a quiet greeting, and directs us toward the formal drawing room at the end of the long main hallway. The house is completely silent, the thick antique carpets absorbing our footsteps. I brace myself for the icy judgment of Richard and Vivian. I mentally prepare the legal facts, the precise timeline of the digital sabotage, and the indisputable proof of my innocence. But the moment Julian pushes open the heavy double doors to the drawing room, all my meticulous preparation shatters into a million pieces. I stop dead in my tracks, my breath catching painfully in my throat. The room is vast, decorated in rich burgundy and dark mahogany wood, with a massive marble fireplace dominating the far wall. Richard Thornton stands rigidly by the mantel, his posture stiff, his face an unreadable mask of wealthy indifference. His wife Vivian sits gracefully on a velvet settee, her posture impeccably straight, her expression pinched with deep concern. But they are not alone. Sitting directly across from Vivian, sipping tea from a delicate china cup, is my mother, Valerie. Beside her, looking like a fragile, traumatized fawn, is Chloe. And standing behind them like a loyal guard dog is Sarah. My treacherous family gatecrashed a highly private emergency meeting with my future in-laws. My blood turns to absolute ice. The sheer audacity of this intrusion is staggering. This is a highly secure private estate. They had to have talked their way past the front gate security, manipulating their way into the inner sanctum of the Thornton family. Julian freezes beside me. A low, dangerous sound rumbles in the back of his throat. "What the hell is going on here?" he demands, his voice cracking like a whip through the quiet room. "How did these people get into this house?" Vivian places her teacup down with a sharp, precise clink. Her pale blue eyes lock onto me, radiating pure disdain. "Keep your voice down, Julian," she reprimands him, her tone completely devoid of warmth. "Your guests arrived shortly before you did. They were extremely distressed. They came to warn us about the woman you brought into our home." I stare at my family. They have orchestrated a visual masterpiece. Chloe has completely abandoned her usual designer wardrobe and heavy makeup. She is wearing a modest high-necked beige blouse and a simple gray cardigan that swallows her frame. Her hair is pulled back into a messy, unassuming ponytail. The theatrical bruise on her face is prominently displayed, looking even more purple and swollen under the warm light of the crystal chandelier. She shrinks back into the sofa when Julian raises his voice, clutching a tissue in her trembling hands, playing the part of the battered, terrified victim with terrifying, flawless perfection. Sarah stands with her arms crossed, looking at me with a sickeningly triumphant smirk. But Valerie is the true maestro of this performance. My mother looks at Vivian with an expression of deep maternal sorrow. "We did not want to intrude." "Vivian," Valerie says, her voice thick with fake emotion, "but we felt a moral obligation to protect your family. Maya has been completely out of control. We are terrified of what she might do to Julian when she finally snaps." "Get out of my parents' house right now," Julian snarls, taking a threatening step toward Valerie. "I will call security and have you physically dragged out of here." Richard steps forward, raising a hand to stop his son. "Julian, calm yourself," his father commands, his voice echoing with authoritative weight. "These women came to us in tears. They have presented us with highly disturbing information. Information that you and Maya have apparently been hiding from us." I finally find my voice. I step past Julian, walking slowly into the center of the room. My mind is rapidly analyzing the battlefield. I refuse to show them a single ounce of fear or panic. "Information," I repeat, keeping my tone deadly calm. "You mean the fabricated assault charges they engineered to extort money from me, or the fake video they uploaded this morning?" Vivian stands up, smoothing the front of her tailored dress. "The video is appalling, Maya," she says, her voice dripping with aristocratic condescension. "But physical violence is a matter for the police. What concerns us is the severe financial liability you bring to our family. We do not align ourselves with fraud." I frown, genuinely confused for a fraction of a second. "Fraud?" Valerie sighs dramatically, picking up a thick, leather-bound folder from the coffee table. She holds it out to Vivian. "I am so sorry," Valerie whispers, shaking her head. "We tried to cover for you. We really did. But you are destroying yourself." Vivian takes the folder. She opens it, pulling out a stack of heavily redacted documents. I recognize the formatting immediately. They are banking statements, corporate tax filings, and legal notices. But they are completely fake. These documents, Vivian says, holding up a sheet of paper with my company logo printed at the top, show that your crisis management firm is currently $7 million in debt. They show that you have been embezzling funds from your clients to cover massive gambling losses. According to your mother, the authorities are preparing an indictment for wire fraud. My jaw tightens. The sheer depth of their sickness knows absolutely no bounds. Valerie deliberately forged federal financial records to convince them I am a desperate criminal. Vivian Thornton traces a perfectly manicured finger over the forged letterhead. The thick cream-colored paper bears my company's exact logo, the font flawlessly replicated. She looks up, her eyes cold and dissecting, assessing me, not as a future daughter-in-law, but as a hostile corporate liability. Richard steps closer to his wife, peering over her shoulder to inspect the fabricated wire fraud indictments. The silence in the drawing room is absolute, broken only by the soft manufactured sniffles coming from Chloe on the velvet settee. I do not break eye contact with Vivian. I do not flinch. In the crisis management industry, the first person to show panic loses the room. I catalog the forgery techniques in my mind. They have stolen a blank invoice template from Jamal's accounting firm, superimposed my corporate letterhead, and drafted a highly convincing narrative of financial ruin. They know the Thorntons value stability above all else. A $7 million debt and an impending federal investigation are the exact triggers needed to activate Richard and Vivian's defensive instincts. Sarah recognizes the shifting power dynamic. She sees the doubt blooming in Richard's eyes and seizes the opportunity. She steps forward, leaving her position behind the settee, and approaches Julian's father. She does not play the hysterical victim like Chloe, nor the grieving mother like Valerie. Sarah plays the most dangerous role of all, the objective, deeply concerned professional. Mr. Thornton. Sarah begins, her voice pitched to a low, soothing cadence. She clasps her hands together in front of her, the very picture of polite reluctance. I know how this looks. I know it seems completely unbelievable that a family would barge into your home like this. We are deeply ashamed to be sitting in your drawing room discussing these matters. But as a mother and as a woman who has watched Maya operate for years, I could not let your son become her next casualty. Richard straightens his posture, his aristocratic features hardening. Next casualty, he asks, his voice sharp and demanding. Sarah nods, casting a brief, mournful glance in my direction. Maya is a brilliant strategist, Mr. Thornton. She is incredibly skilled at making people believe her version of reality. But this is not the first time she has used her PR expertise to cover her own tracks. She has a history of targeting wealthy, influential men to fund her lifestyle and prop up her failing firm. Every time a business venture of hers begins to collapse, she miraculously finds a new benefactor. When they realize they are being used, she destroys their reputations so thoroughly they cannot speak out against her. I listen to my sister-in-law weave a tapestry of absolute fiction with a sense of grim professional admiration. She is good. She is hitting every single one of Richard's pressure points. She is painting me as a parasitic gold digger who viewed the Thornton empire not as a family to join, but as a corporate bailout waiting to be harvested. Valerie nods solemnly from the sofa, dabbing her dry eyes. We tried to stop her, Richard. We tried to get her help for her gambling addiction, but she cut us off. She threw her own blood relatives away because we refused to be complicit in her cons. When she met Julian, we knew exactly what she was doing. She needed the Thornton name to shield herself from the federal authorities. She needed your son's money to pay back the millions she embezzled. The sheer audacity of the lies is staggering. They have taken my decision to distance myself from their toxic behavior and reframed it as the desperate actions of a guilty fugitive. They are using my financial success, built on years of grueling 80-hour work weeks, and reducing it to a series of manipulative, predatory cons. Vivian places the forged documents on the glass coffee table with a sharp, decisive movement. Julian, she says, her tone commanding and icy. Have you seen these financial statements? Have you vetted her company's ledgers? Or were you too blinded by this relationship to conduct proper due diligence? Before Julian can answer, Chloe makes her move. She shifts her weight on the velvet settee, sliding closer to where Julian is standing. She reaches out with a trembling hand and gently places her fingers on his knee. It is a highly calculated gesture of intimacy, designed to visually claim him in front of his parents. She looks up at Vivian, tears welling in her carefully bruised eyes, her voice quivering with perfect, practiced vulnerability. "I just want to protect him," Chloe whispers, a single tear tracking down her cheek. "I have loved him from afar for years. I saw the way she manipulated him, the way she isolated him from his friends. I tried to warn him yesterday at Thanksgiving. I tried to tell him about the missing money and the police investigation. That is why she attacked me. She knew I was going to expose her fraud to you. She told me she would kill me before she let me ruin her access to the Thornton fortune." Chloe looks up at Julian, her expression a masterclass in fragile devotion. "I am so sorry, Julian," she sobs softly. "I never wanted to cause this much pain. I just could not let her destroy you, the way she destroyed our family." The air in the room turns dangerously thin. The sheer, unadulterated violation of Chloe, touching him, of her daring to gaze at him with manufactured love while accusing me of extortion and violence, is the final spark that ignites the powder keg. Julian does not just react, he erupts. He violently steps back, forcing Chloe's hand off his knee as if her touch is burning acid. His entire body goes rigid, with a fury so absolute and consuming that the atmosphere in the drawing room fundamentally changes. The polished, composed billionaire air vanishes, completely replaced by a man ready to tear the room apart with his bare hands. "Do not ever touch me," Julian snarls, his voice a low, terrifying rumble that makes Chloe genuinely flinch. Julian steps forward, his broad shoulders squared, advancing on Valerie and Sarah with lethal intent. He is not going to politely ask them to leave. He is preparing to physically drag them out of the estate and unleash a legal and financial onslaught that will leave them with absolutely nothing. His hands clench into fists at his sides, his dark eyes fixed on my mother with a predatory focus. "I will not stand here and listen to another word of this completely fabricated, delusional garbage," Julian declares, his voice cutting through the room with unquestionable authority. "You break into my parents' house. You present forged documents. You parade this disgusting charade of abuse, and you dare to threaten the woman I am going to marry. I am going to have you arrested for trespassing, and then I am going to personally ensure that every single one of you faces federal extortion charges." Richard Thornton stands up straight, his face flushed with anger at his son's outburst. "Julian, control yourself. We are looking at evidence of wire fraud." "It is fake, Richard," Julian roars, turning his burning gaze on his father. "It is a coordinated extortion attempt, and you are playing right into their hands by entertaining it." Julian turns back to my family, taking another aggressive step toward the settee. Valerie shrinks back into the upholstery, real fear finally cracking her arrogant mask. Chloe pulls her knees to her chest, realizing that her vulnerable act has triggered a predator instead of a protector. I see the trajectory of the moment with total clarity. Julian is fiercely defending me, but his rage is giving them exactly what they want. If he throws them out in a fit of anger, Richard and Vivian will view it as blind, irrational defense of a guilty woman. They will believe Sarah's narrative that I have completely manipulated him. To win this war, I cannot rely on Julian's rage. I must rely on my own absolute, undeniable authority. I step forward, moving smoothly and decisively. I reach out and press my hand firmly against the center of Julian's chest. The physical contact stops his forward momentum instantly. He looks down at me, his eyes dark and wild with anger, his chest heaving under my palm. I apply a steady grounding pressure, holding his gaze until the lethal fury in his eyes slightly recedes, replaced by a questioning focus. "I have this," I tell him softly, my voice calm, projecting absolute control. "I appreciate you defending me, Julian, but I handle corporate sabotage for a living. I do not need you to fight my battles. I need you to stand beside me while I finish this." Julian holds my gaze for a fraction of a second longer. He feels the unyielding certainty in my hand against his chest. Slowly, the tension bleeds out of his shoulders. He gives me a single sharp nod and steps back, yielding the floor entirely to me. He crosses his arms, standing slightly behind my right shoulder, presenting a united, unbreakable front. I turn slowly, deliberately, surveying the room. I look at Richard, whose jaw is clenched with disapproval. I look at Vivian, who is watching me with sharp, critical calculation. And finally, I turn my attention to the three women sitting on the velvet settee: my mother, my sister, and my sister-in-law, the architects of this digital and physical ambush. They are expecting a screaming match. They are expecting me to cry, to defend my honor, to frantically deny the accusations of fraud and violence. They want chaos because chaos obscures the truth. Instead, I offer them a cold, hollow smile. I walk over to the glass coffee table and pick up the stack of forged financial documents Valerie had presented. I leaf through the pages slowly, my eyes scanning the falsified balance sheets and the fake federal indictment notices. The silence in the drawing room stretches out tight and uncomfortable as everyone waits for my reaction. I finish reviewing the final page, tap the stack neatly against the glass surface, and place it back down. "That is a very compelling narrative, Sarah," I say, my voice ringing clear and perfectly steady through the grand room. "You have correctly identified the pressure points of the Thornton family. You have constructed a highly plausible motivation for the assault, provided counterfeit financial records to support the extortion angle, and deployed Chloe to play the emotionally devastated victim. As a crisis management professional, I must admit the strategy is aggressive. It is well-timed, and it relies heavily on the shock value of public scandal." I step closer to the settee, my posture radiating the commanding presence of a woman who controls empires. However, I continue lowering my voice to a sharp, deadly cadence. "You made one catastrophic miscalculation. You assumed that because I protect other people's secrets for a living, I would not have the foresight to protect my own. You assumed my desire to marry into this family would force me to quietly pay you off to make this disappear." I reach into the interior pocket of my suit jacket. My fingers close around the cold metal of the silver flash drive. Valerie's eyes drop to my hand, a sudden sharp flicker of unease crossing her features. Sarah shifts her weight defensively, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. The trap has been triggered, the doors are locked, and it is finally time to introduce the raw, unfiltered truth into the Thornton drawing room. Vivian Thornton turns to me, her face ice cold, holding up the forged bank documents. The entire room of elite stakeholders, family members, and Thornton legal advisors falls dead silent, waiting for me to break. Valerie smirks, mouthing the words, "You are done." I do not break down. I do not plead. I calmly pull out my phone, connect it to the estate's massive smart television screen via Bluetooth, and smile. "Mrs. Thornton, you run the largest anti-fraud charity in the state. I think you are going to love what I'm about to show you." The heavy oak doors of the drawing room had opened wider just moments ago, and a contingent of Richard's closest advisors had silently filed into the space. He must have summoned them the moment Chloe and Valerie arrived, preparing for a full corporate tribunal to excise me from their pristine dynasty. They gather behind Vivian, a wall of bespoke suits and calculating stares, expecting a hysterical defense. They anticipate a messy unraveling that will only confirm their fabricated narrative of my supposed instability. Instead, I bypass the emotional performance completely. I tap my screen twice, accessing the secure digital dossier Marcus compiled just 20 minutes ago. I swipe my thumb, casting the display. The screen flickers to life, casting a stark, bright glow across the burgundy room. Vivian blinks, completely taken aback by my absolute lack of panic. Richard frowns, stepping forward to look at the screen. The first image that appears is a highly detailed, undeniable heat map of digital traffic. "Gentlemen," I say, addressing the legal advisors standing behind my future-in-laws, "you are currently looking at the back-end analytics of a targeted corporate smear campaign. As you know, my crisis management firm handles digital assassinations on a daily basis. When a coordinated swarm of thousands of bot accounts began flooding my business profiles with one-star reviews this morning, my lead tech analyst immediately initiated a trace. The red lines on this map represent the flow of those fabricated reviews. Notice how they do not originate from random users. They originate from a centralized deployment signal. I tap my screen again, and the image zooms in, displaying two specific IP addresses alongside a credit card receipt. This receipt, I continue, my voice echoing with clinical precision, shows a payment of $12,000 to a known troll farm in Eastern Europe. The transaction was executed at 2 in the morning. The IP addresses responsible for launching this attack belong to a residential router in the suburbs and a corporate network downtown. I look directly at Sarah, whose triumphant smirk instantly vanishes, replaced by a chalky, bloodless pallor. The residential IP address belongs to Sarah and Jamal's home network, I state clearly. The corporate IP belongs to Jamal's desk computer at his accounting firm. My brother and sister-in-law did not just leave fake reviews. They committed federal cyber harassment and corporate sabotage. They attempted to bankrupt my firm using their own personal internet connections, leaving a digital footprint so massive a first-year forensics student could trace it. A collective gasp ripples through the contingent of stakeholders. The lead Thornton legal advisor adjusts his glasses, staring intently at the screen. "That is a federal offense," he murmurs. Sarah leaps up from the settee, her hands trembling wildly. "She is lying!" Sarah screams, her voice cracking with sheer panic. "She hacked our computers. She planted that evidence to frame us because she knows we know the truth." Julian steps forward, his presence towering. "Shut your mouth, Sarah," he commands, his voice dropping into a lethal register. "You are standing in a room full of lawyers. Every word you say is digging your grave deeper." I do not let the interruption derail my momentum. I swipe my screen again. The cyber attack vanishes, replaced by the exact forged documents Vivian is currently holding in her hands, displayed side by side with genuine certified bank records. "The documents my mother just handed you are incredibly creative," I tell Vivian, holding her gaze. "But they are entirely fraudulent. My firm is not $7 million in debt. In fact, we just posted record profits for the third consecutive quarter." The genuine bank statements on the right side of the screen were securely transmitted from my chief financial officer directly to the Federal Reserve. I tap the screen, highlighting a specific signature on the forged documents. However, I want to draw your attention to this signature. It is a very good replication of mine, but it is not perfect. It is the exact same forgery technique used on a series of illegal offshore wire transfers 3 years ago. I swipe to the next slide. A complex web of financial transactions appears, linking a domestic shell company to a Cayman Islands account. Valerie lets out a sharp, strangled gasp. She grabs the armrest of the settee, her knuckles turning bone white. Her elegant, calculated persona crumbles into a mask of pure terror. "For the past 3 years, my mother and my sister Chloe have been siphoning funds from a charity organization Valerie supposedly manages," I announce, my voice carrying the weight of an executioner's axe. "They forged my signature to act as the primary guarantor for these offshore accounts, funneling the embezzled money to fund Chloe's lavish lifestyle. The flash drive containing this data was hidden in my mother's safe. I retrieved it last night." The stakeholders begin murmuring furiously. Richard Thornton's face turns a dark, dangerous shade of crimson. He glares at Valerie with a look of utter disgust. "You brought counterfeit documents into my home to cover up your own embezzlement." Richard growls, his voice shaking with aristocratic rage. "You attempted to use my family to legitimize a fraud scheme." Valerie shakes her head frantically, tears ruining her perfectly applied mascara. "No, Richard, please, you have to understand. Maya is twisting the facts. She is trying to confuse you." Vivian raises a hand, instantly silencing my mother. "Do not speak to my husband." Vivian orders, her tone dropping the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. "Maya, continue. You have one more accusation to dismantle." I turn my attention to Chloe. She is shaking violently, her eyes darting toward the door as if calculating her chances of escape. She knows the final blow is coming. I tap my phone screen one last time. The financial records disappear, replaced by high-definition security footage from the lobby of my apartment building, time stamped at 6 o'clock yesterday evening. "This footage clearly shows Chloe walking out of the building," I explain calmly. She is entirely alone, entirely uninjured, and aggressively texting on her phone. This footage was recorded hours after the supposed violent assault took place. As you can clearly see, my sister does not have a single mark on her face. Her jaw is not bruised. She is walking perfectly fine. I tapped the screen to play a secondary video clip, this one retrieved from a high-end theatrical makeup supply store downtown. The timestamp is from 8 o'clock last night. The video shows Chloe standing at the register purchasing specialized contouring palettes designed specifically to create realistic stage bruises. She even asks the cashier for advice on blending purple and green tones to simulate blunt force trauma. "You did not go to a doctor, Chloe," I say, my voice ringing with total finality. "You went to a costume shop, you bought a makeup kit, painted a bruise on your own face, and filmed a performance designed to incite a public witch hunt. You filed a false police report based on cosmetics." The room descends into a heavy, suffocating silence as the absolute destruction of their entire scheme settles over them. The trap has snapped shut, the truth has been illuminated, and my family has nowhere left to run. "You came to destroy my livelihood, reputation, and marriage," I state, projecting my voice so everyone hears the certainty in my tone. "You gate-crashed a private meeting to spin a tale of ruin, completely underestimating my capacity to fight back. You assumed I would surrender out of fear, but I do not fear scandals. I eliminate them. You have documented your own crimes. I am handing this evidence directly to the authorities. This extortion attempt is over. You will face the full consequences." I step toward the massive television dominating the far wall of the Thornton drawing room. The screen is currently displaying a dormant screensaver, a rotating gallery of classic impressionist paintings. I plug the silver flash drive directly into the hidden port on the side of the console. The television recognizes the device instantly. A file directory appears on the screen. The room is so quiet I can hear the sharp, uneven breathing of my sister behind me. I select the primary video file. I turn back to face the room. I look directly at Richard and Vivian. In my line of work, I tell them, my voice steady and resonant, "You learn very quickly that paranoia is just another word for professional preparation." When my family insisted on inviting themselves to my home for Thanksgiving yesterday, I did not just prepare a meal. I activated the integrated security system. Every room in my house is wired with ultra-high-definition motion-activated cameras with directional audio. I press play on my phone. The massive screen flashes black for a fraction of a second before blooming into vibrant, crystal-clear color. The resolution is flawless. The image on the screen displays my own formal dining room. The remnants of our Thanksgiving dinner are scattered across the table. The camera angle captures the entire room perfectly. Valerie, Chloe, and Sarah are on the screen. They are standing near the dining table, their postures relaxed entirely, unaware they are being recorded. The audio kicks in crisp and undeniable. The acoustics of my dining room amplify every syllable. On the screen, my mother takes a sip of wine. Her face is twisted in an ugly, bitter sneer. She looks nothing like the weeping, devastated mother who was just performing on that velvet settee. She is not going to just hand over the firm the digital version of Valerie snaps, slamming her wine glass down on the table. She is too selfish. She has always been entirely selfish. She would rather see her own brother go to federal prison than part with a single dime. In the drawing room, the real Valerie gasps loudly. She covers her mouth with both hands, her eyes wide with mounting horror. Richard Thornton stiffens. His posture goes entirely rigid as he processes the crass, venomous tone of the woman who had just been begging for his sympathy. On the screen, my digital self walks into the frame. I am holding a stack of dirty plates. I look exhausted but composed. "You are not getting my company, Valerie," I say on the video. Jamal dug his own grave. He can face the consequences. I am not bankrupting my life to save him. The face of the digital Valerie contorts with sudden, explosive rage. She steps forward, closing the distance between us in a fraction of a second. She raises her hand and strikes me across the face with a vicious, open-palmed slap. The sound of the impact cracks like a gunshot through the drawing room. Vivian Thornton visibly recoils. She actually takes a physical step back, her hand flying to her chest. Richard lets out a sharp, disgusted breath. Julian, standing beside me, goes completely still. I can feel the heat radiating from his body, his protective instincts surging, but he honors my request and remains in place. The violence on the screen is stark and undeniable. But the video does not end there. It is only the beginning of their absolute destruction. On the screen, after I walk out of the room holding my stinging cheek, Chloe steps forward. The real Chloe, sitting on the settee, begins to shake violently. She grabs the arm of Sarah, her fingernails digging into the fabric of her suit. "Turn it off," Chloe whispers in the drawing room, her voice a reedy, desperate squeak. "Please turn it off." No one moves to stop the video. The Thornton legal advisors are staring at the screen with predatory fascination. They are watching a masterclass in self-incrimination. On the screen, Chloe rolls her eyes at her mother. "Stop hitting her, you idiot." The digital. Chloe complains, her voice dripping with extreme boredom. "If you leave a mark, she will just use it against us. We need to be smart about this. We need the Thornton money." Sarah nods in agreement on the video. "Chloe is right," Sarah says, leaning against the dining table. "Julian Thornton is a walking bank account. We just need to separate him from Maya. Once he dumps her, Maya will have no protection. She will be desperate. She will have to sell her firm to us just to survive the fallout." The real Sarah is staring at the floor, looking as if she is about to physically vomit. The polished, concerned, professional persona she wore minutes ago has completely evaporated. She looks exactly like what she is, a common, desperate extortionist caught in a lie. "And how exactly do we separate them?" the digital Valerie asks, rubbing her forehead. "They are getting married. He is obsessed with her." "Because he is stupid." The digital Chloe laughs, a harsh, grating sound that echoes sickeningly through the drawing room. "He is just another arrogant rich guy thinking with his ego. I can easily play the victim. I will tell him Maya attacked me. I will tell him she is deeply jealous of me. Men like him love saving broken women. I will just cry, touch his arm, and look up at him with big, sad eyes. He will drop her in a second. And once he drops her, I can move in. I have been wanting a piece of that Thornton fortune since I saw his car pull up to the driveway. He is easily worth $1 billion. I just need to pretend to be the sweet, innocent sister who needs his strong protection." The silence in the drawing room is absolute. The unadulterated revulsion on the face of Vivian Thornton is profound. She turns her head slowly, looking down at the real Chloe on the settee. Chloe is sobbing now, but there are no tears. It is a dry, panicked hyperventilation. The carefully constructed bruise on her face looks cheap, theatrical, and pathetic. Richard Thornton looks at his son. Julian is staring at the screen with an expression of cold, detached disgust. He does not look heartbroken. He looks like a man watching an insect scurry across a marble floor. The video continues rolling. I have ensured every second of their conspiracy is exposed to the harsh light of day. "It is not enough to just break them up," the digital Sarah says on the screen, taking charge of the conversation. "We need to make Maya radioactive. We need to make the Thorntons view her as a massive corporate liability. Vivian Thornton protects that family charity with her life. If we forge a set of financial documents showing Maya is bankrupt and facing a federal indictment for embezzlement, Vivian will throw Maya out of the estate." The digital Valerie nods, a dark smile spreading across her face. "I can forge the banking letters," Valerie says on the video. "I still have access to the old letterhead templates from when I worked at the community bank. I can make them look entirely official. I will tell Vivian that Maya has a severe gambling addiction. That is a nice, dirty detail. Rich people hate messy addictions. And I will handle the digital side," Sarah adds with a smirk. "Jamal knows a guy who runs a bot farm out of Estonia. For $12,000, we can flood her business pages with fake reviews. We can ruin the reputation of her company overnight. By the time the Thorntons finish reviewing the forged documents, her firm will look like a sinking ship. They will sever all ties." The digital Chloe claps her hands together, looking absolutely thrilled. "And then I get to go to the estate and cry on the shoulder of Julian. This is perfect. We ruin her life, we steal her company, and I get a billionaire upgrade." I reach out and tap my phone screen. The video pauses. The final image on the television is a high-definition freeze frame of my mother, my sister, and my sister-in-law smiling together, celebrating their brilliant plan to destroy my entire life. The image of my mother, sister, and sister-in-law smiling in my dining room burns brightly on the massive television. The vast mahogany-paneled drawing room is now perfectly terrifyingly quiet. Richard Thornton stands rigid, his face a mask of absolute revulsion. He is looking at three women who attempted to bring fraud into his inner sanctum. Vivian Thornton slowly lowers herself onto the edge of an armchair. The forged documents she holds loosely in her lap finally slide to the floor, scattering haphazardly across the intricate antique rug. Julian does not speak. He steps even closer to me, his imposing presence a solid, unyielding wall of support. He looks at Chloe, who is shivering on the velvet settee. She reaches a trembling hand toward him, but the look of pure contempt in Julian's eyes stops her dead. She physically shrinks far back into the soft cushions, finally realizing the billionaire savior she thought she could so easily manipulate sees her exactly for the predator she is. Sarah attempts to somehow salvage the unsalvageable. She clears her throat. "This is an elaborate deep fake," Sarah says, her voice completely lacking any authority. "It is an AI-generated video. Maya has access to high-level tech teams. She manufactured this entire recording to discredit us." I do not bother looking at Sarah. I tap my phone, closing the video file. "You are right about one thing, Sarah," I say clearly. "I do have access to tech teams, which is why I brought the receipts." I swipe to the next slide. The screen fills with a chaotic spread of invoices, past due notices, and aggressive collection agency letters. I highlight a specific column of numbers. "Let us talk about absolute financial ruin," I suggest very calmly now. "Chloe, you built a very impressive brand as a luxury lifestyle influencer. You have 500,000 followers who believe you spend your days lounging on yachts and shopping in exclusive designer boutiques without a care in the world." Chloe goes completely pale. She shakes her head, a silent plea, but I have no mercy left to give. I tap the smart screen again, instantly bringing up certified legal documents. "The reality is quite different," I continue. "Every single designer handbag you proudly showcase online is strictly rented. The luxury cars in your posts are leased, and those leases are currently in default. You currently owe $400,000 to aggressive, unregulated creditors. They are preparing to seize your assets and publicly humiliate you. You came here because you are drowning in debt and needed a wealthy mark to pay off your creditors before they destroy your fake empire." Vivian Thornton lets out a very sharp breath. She looks at Chloe as if the young girl is a contagion. "You attempted to use my son as a human shield for your debts," Vivian states, her voice dripping with disgust. Chloe bursts into genuine tears. They are the ugly sobs of a cornered animal. She hides her face in her hands, unable to look at Julian. Valerie suddenly jumps up from the settee, pointing a violently shaking finger at me. "How dare you?" my mother screams, flushed with panic. "You stole your father's life insurance money to build your little agency. You took everything from us. You left us with nothing, and now you stand there judging us. We only did this because we were desperate to survive." I look at the woman who gave birth to me. She has repeated the lie about my father's life insurance for so long that she truly believes I am the villain. It is time to execute the final maneuver. I swipe my thumb across the screen one last time. The collection of Chloe's debts vanishes. A highly complex, meticulously organized corporate flowchart immediately appears. At the top is a holding company named Apex Management Solutions. Arrows link Apex directly to various banks and creditors. "I want everyone to look very closely at this structure," I say, my voice dropping to a deadly cadence. "This is the financial guillotine dropping." "Valerie," I begin. "For the past 5 years, you have repeatedly told anyone who would listen that I selfishly stole my father's $2 million life insurance policy. You claimed I used it to fund my firm while leaving you to fend for yourselves. You used that lie to justify your toxic behavior." I stop pacing and turn to face her. "My father did not have a life insurance policy," I state clearly. The room goes perfectly still. He cashed it out 3 years before he died to cover the second mortgage you secretly took out to fund your casino trips. Valerie opens her mouth to scream, but I raise my hand, stopping her. I built my firm from the ground up, I continue. I never took a penny from this family. But you, Valerie, took plenty. I point to the top of the flowchart. 5 years ago, you were about to lose the house. The bank was initiating foreclosure. Your gambling debt spiraled completely out of control. Miraculously, an anonymous parent company swooped in. A company called Apex Management Solutions bought your debt, paid off the back taxes, and quietly covered your mortgage payments every single month for the past 5 years. They also settled Chloe's credit card defaults. Valerie stares at the screen, her breathing shallow. I do not understand, she stammers. Apex is an investment firm. They bought the debt. I pull a certified corporate registration document from my jacket pocket and hold it up. Apex Management Solutions is a blind shell company, I announce. It was created solely to disperse funds anonymously. I tap the screen and the Apex logo dissolves, revealing the true parent company beneath it. The logo of my crisis management firm appears. I am Apex. I say the words, landing like physical blows. I am the anonymous benefactor. I kept a roof over your head. For 5 years, while you were telling the entire world I was a thief, I was quietly funding your entire fraudulent lifestyle. The color drains from Valerie's face. She stares at me, her eyes wide with shock. She looks at the screen, processing the revelation. The daughter she threw away, the daughter she tried to destroy today, has been her sole lifeline. Chloe stops crying. She stares at the television screen in absolute disbelief. The realization hits her that the money she has been spending all came from the sister she just tried to frame. You did not come here today to secure your future, I tell my mother. You came here and tried to destroy the only safety net you had left. I paid your debts because I pitied you, but that ends now. I look directly at the row of Thornton legal advisors. Gentlemen, please take careful note. As of this exact minute, Apex Management Solutions is dissolving all financial support for Valerie and Chloe. I am freezing the accounts and releasing the protective holds on their credit profiles. Their aggressive creditors will be notified almost immediately. I turn back to my mother. She is trembling. You wanted to convince the Thornton family that I was a ruthless operator who destroys people for profit, I say. You were half right. I am calculating and ruthless. But I do not destroy innocent people. I only destroy the ones who come for me. Richard Thornton steps forward. He looks at my family, then looks at me. The disdain he previously held has vanished, replaced by a profound, calculating respect. I have surgically dismantled my enemies using their own ammunition. Get these people out of my house! Richard orders his security team, his voice echoing with finality. If they resist, call the police. Julian steps to my side. He takes my hand, his grip firm and proud. He does not look at Chloe or Valerie as the security guards move in. He only looks at me. Valerie tries to speak, reaching out toward me as a guard takes her arm. Maya, please, she whispers, her voice breaking. We will lose everything. I look at her one last time. The anger is gone. The hurt is gone. There is only the cold reality of a severed tie. You already lost absolutely everything, Valerie, I quietly reply to her. You just did not realize it until this very day. The heavy oak doors click shut behind my mother and sister, their desperate pleas muffled by the thick mahogany walls of the Thornton estate. The drawing room, previously suffocating with their manufactured drama, suddenly feels expansive, yet the air remains crackling with residual tension. Vivian Thornton exhales a long, shaky breath, sinking deeper into her armchair as she processes the sheer magnitude of the deception she just witnessed. Richard stands perfectly rigid, his face an unreadable mask of wealthy indignation, quietly conferring with his lead legal advisor. Julian remains exactly where he is, his hand finding the small of my back, a silent, immovable pillar of support. The immediate threat of Valerie and Chloe has been neutralized, their extortion completely dismantled. But the cleansing of my life is not quite complete. My gaze sweeps across the vast room and locks onto the only remaining parasite, Sarah. She is standing near the edge of the large Persian rug, her face completely drained of its former arrogant color. She is trembling. She takes a slow, agonizing step backward, her eyes darting frantically toward the hallway, desperately hoping that the sheer chaos of Valerie's dramatic exit has somehow rendered her completely invisible. She takes another silent step backward, her hand reaching blindly for the brass handle of the side door. She wants to vanish into the shadows to escape the undeniable reckoning that has just decimated her allies. I do not let her move another inch. Do not even think about touching that doorknob, Sarah, I say, my voice slicing through the quiet room like a freshly sharpened blade. She freezes instantly, her hand hovering just inches from the polished brass. She turns her head slowly, her eyes wide with the panicked realization of a cornered animal. You thought you could just quietly slip out the back way after orchestrating a coordinated malicious attack on my entire livelihood, I ask, stepping away from Julian and moving toward the center of the room. You thought you could stand there smug and triumphant, while Valerie peddled forged federal indictments, and then just casually walk away when the absolute truth was exposed. You are deeply mistaken if you believe your involvement in this digital assassination is going to remain in the dark. Sarah swallows hard, her throat visibly bobbing as she tries to summon her professional persona. Maya, this is a family matter, she stammers, her voice thin and completely devoid of its usual condescending authority. Valerie and Chloe acted entirely on their own. I had absolutely no idea they were planning to present fake banking documents or lie about a physical assault. I was just here to offer moral support because I was concerned about your mental state. I had nothing to do with their extortion scheme. The heavy oak doors suddenly swing open again. Jamal bursts into the drawing room, his chest heaving, his tie slightly askew. He must have ignored the security guards at the front gate, driven by frantic, panicked text messages Sarah surely sent him the moment my presentation began. He stops in his tracks, taking in the scene, his wife cowering near the side exit, the Thornton legal team watching with hawkish intensity, and me standing in front of the massive television screen. Sarah Jamal calls out, rushing across the room to stand protectively in front of her. What is going on here? Where is your mother? Where is Chloe? He turns to me, puffing out his chest in a pathetic display of misplaced authority. What have you done to them, Maya? Whatever lies you are spinning to these people, it stops right now. I am not going to let you bully my wife or my family. I look at my older brother, feeling a profound sense of exhaustion mixed with absolute clarity. Jamal, your timing is genuinely impeccable, I reply smoothly. I was just about to ask Sarah about her extensive knowledge of offshore bot farms and digital harassment campaigns. Jamal frowns, crossing his arms defensively. Bot farms. What ridiculous nonsense are you talking about? Sarah is a respected professional. We do not have time for your paranoid delusions. Sarah grabs his sleeve, her fingers digging into his forearm. Jamal, we need to leave right now, she whispers urgently, her eyes darting toward the door. Please, just get me out of here. But Jamal's ego will not allow a quiet retreat. No, Sarah, we are not running away from her, he declares loudly, addressing Richard and Vivian Thornton. I apologize for this ridiculous spectacle. My sister has a long history of creating elaborate fantasies to excuse her professional failures. She is clearly trying to deflect from whatever mess she has created. I turn back to the smart screen and tap my phone. The image of the fraudulent financial documents vanishes. In its place, a highly detailed heat map of digital traffic appears glowing brightly in the dimly lit room. Gentlemen, I say, directing my attention to the Thornton legal advisors, please examine the screen. This morning, my crisis management firm was hit by a coordinated swarm of thousands of fake reviews and highly defamatory comments across every single online platform. The reviews claimed I was under federal investigation, that I embezzled client funds, and that my business was a complete scam. I continue pacing slowly in front of the display. This kind of targeted cyber sabotage is designed to trigger automatic algorithmic penalties, effectively erasing my company from search results and panicking my legitimate clients. It is a highly aggressive, malicious tactic. However, when you purchase these illegal services from cheap, unregulated troll farms in Eastern Europe, they tend to leave a rather massive digital footprint. I tap my phone again. The screen zooms in on a specific cluster of data points. My lead technical analyst initiated a traceback protocol the moment the attack began. These red lines represent the origin deployment signals for the bot network. They trace directly back to a $12,000 credit card payment processed at 2 in the morning. And more importantly, they trace back to two very specific localized IP addresses. Jamal lets out a harsh, dismissive laugh. You expect anyone to believe this garbage? You could have typed up those numbers yourself. This proves absolutely nothing. I do not break eye contact with my brother. I swipe to the next slide. Two IP addresses appear in large, bold font alongside their physical geographic locations. The first IP address, I announce clearly, originates from a residential router registered at your exact home address, Jamal. The payment to the troll farm was made using a credit card registered in Sarah's name. Sarah gasps, taking another step backward until her spine hits the mahogany wall. She orchestrated the entire fake review campaign from your living room couch while you were sleeping. She deliberately attempted to bankrupt my company using your home network. The lead Thornton lawyer steps forward, pulling a silver pen from his pocket. That constitutes federal wire fraud, cyber harassment, and intentional tortious interference with a business contract. The lawyer states his voice perfectly. Even. If these logs are verified, she is looking at severe criminal liability. Jamal turns to Sarah, his face slack with confusion. Sarah, what is this? He asks, his voice trembling slightly. Tell them this is a lie. Tell them you did not do this. Sarah cannot meet his eyes. She stares at the floor, her breathing shallow and ragged. Jamal turns back to me, his face flushing with a desperate, furious denial. Even if she did, it has nothing to do with me, he stammers, throwing his own wife under the bus to save himself. I am a respected accountant. I had zero knowledge of her actions. I offer him a cold, pitying smile and tap the screen one last time. That brings us to the second IP address, I say softly. This address was used to monitor the bot farm dashboard and authorize a secondary payment just 3 hours ago. It traces directly to the secure servers at your accounting firm, Jamal. You used your own company's network to actively participate in the cyber harassment. Jamal's arrogant posture completely collapses. He stares up at the bright television screen in absolute stunned horror. You committed federal corporate sabotage using your firm's infrastructure, I conclude very quietly. Your entire professional career as an accountant is now permanently over. Jamal slumps against the mahogany wall, sliding down until he hits the floor, his hands gripping his hair. Sarah is frozen, staring at the screen that just broadcasted their federal crimes. The security guards Richard Thornton summoned earlier step fully into the room, their expressions stoic, waiting for the final command to clear the estate. But Valerie cannot accept defeat. She refuses to be dragged out like a common criminal. The exposure of her embezzlement, the fake bruises the bot farms, none of it penetrates her colossal narcissism. Instead of showing remorse, her desperation mutates into explosive, blinding rage. Valerie shoves past one of the security guards. She marches toward me. Her face flushed a dark mottled purple, the veins in her neck straining against her skin. You think you have won? Valerie screams, her voice shattering the sophisticated quiet of the Thornton drawing room. She points a manicured finger inches from my face. You think because you have a few spreadsheets and some video clips that you can dismiss me? I am your mother. I am the matriarch of our family. You came from me. Everything you have, everything you are is because I allowed it. You owe me your absolute loyalty, and instead you bring this disgrace upon our name. I do not flinch. I stand my ground, letting her hot breath wash over me, completely unaffected by the maternal guilt trip that used to paralyze me when I was a child. You are going to regret this, Maya. Valerie snarls, her voice vibrating with venom. I am cutting you off completely. You are formally disowned. Do not ever think about stepping foot in my house again. The family home is mine. It has always been mine. It is the seat of our legacy, and you are officially banished from it. You will never cross that threshold again. You will be dead to me, dead to your brother, dead to your sister. She crosses her arms, breathing heavily, looking around the room as if she has just delivered a fatal blow. She truly believes that denying me access to my childhood home is the ultimate punishment. She thinks the house is her fortress, her unassailable domain, where she holds absolute power. I look at Valerie. I look at her desperate clinging grip on an authority she squandered years ago. Are you quite finished? I ask, my voice completely flat. Valerie glares at me, her chest heaving. It is my house, she spits out, and you are no longer welcome. I slowly turn away from her. I walk over to the leather tote bag I left resting on a side table near the window. I reach inside and pull out a thick, heavy manila folder. The high-grade legal paper inside gives it a substantial weight. I walk back toward the center of the room. I do not look at Jamal, who is weeping on the floor. I do not look at Sarah, trembling by the door. I do not look at Chloe, who has curled into a fetal position on the settee. I only look at Valerie. I step up to the massive imported glass coffee table separating the Thorntons from my disgraced relatives. I hold the folder directly over the center of the glass. I open my hand. The heavy folder hits the glass with a loud, sharp smack that makes Valerie jump. You keep talking about your house, Valerie, I say, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. You keep weaponizing the family estate as if it is your ultimate trump card. But you have a very poor memory when it comes to your own financial negligence. I point to the folder resting on the glass. Open it, I command. Valerie stares at the folder as if it contains a live explosive. She shakes her head, taking a small step backward. I said open it! I repeat, my tone dropping into a freezing authoritative register that leaves no room for debate. Her hands are shaking so badly she can barely grasp the edge of the manila cover. She flips it open. Inside rests a single certified legal deed stamped by the county clerk bearing a bright red official seal. Valerie stares at the heavy black text. Her eyes dart frantically back and forth across the page, trying to comprehend the legal jargon, desperately searching for a loophole that does not exist. Let me help you translate that, since Jamal is currently incapable of acting as your accountant, I say, pacing slowly around the edge of the coffee table. 2 years ago, your gambling addiction peaked. You had already drained my father's life insurance policy to pay off your initial debts. But you could not stop. You took out a massive second mortgage on the family home to cover your losses at the tables. You hid it from everyone. You hid it from Jamal, you hid it from Chloe, and you certainly tried to hide it from me. Valerie's face drains of all remaining color. She looks like a ghost haunting her own life. But you could not make the payments, I continue, my voice steady and relentless. You defaulted on that second mortgage. The bank initiated quiet foreclosure proceedings. You were exactly 30 days away from being dragged out of that house by the county sheriff. You were going to be on the street. Valerie looks up at me, her mouth opening and closing without producing any sound. My crisis management firm monitors the financial health of my immediate associates as a standard security protocol, I explain, looking over at Richard Thornton, who nods slightly in approval. I knew the moment your home went into pre-foreclosure. I knew exactly how much you owed. And I knew that if you lost that house, you would simply move in with me and destroy my sanctuary. I turned back to Valerie. I did not want you in my home, Valerie, so I took steps to ensure you stayed in yours. Julian steps forward, joining the conversation for the first time since the cyberlogs were revealed. My real estate acquisition firm handles distressed properties across the eastern seaboard, Julian says, his voice deep and entirely detached. Maya approached me 2 years ago. She asked my firm to quietly intercept the debt before it went to public auction. My acquisitions team bought the paper from your community bank. We purchased the second mortgage outright. Valerie stares at Julian, her mind short-circuiting. You bought my house, she whispers, the horror dawning on her face. Julian shakes his head, looking down at her with absolute apathy. I did not buy your house, Valerie. I simply facilitated the transaction for the actual buyer. I step right up to the edge of the glass table, closing the distance between my mother and myself. I look directly into her terrified eyes. I bought the debt, Valerie. I say, my voice ringing with total unshakable finality. I used my personal capital, the money I earned building my company, to purchase the deed to the family estate. I paid off the bank. I satisfied the county clerks. I own the land. I own the structure. I own every single brick, every floorboard, and every single blade of grass on that property. Valerie stumbles backward, her knees giving out. She catches herself on the edge of a chair, gripping the upholstery like a drowning sailor holding onto driftwood. That is impossible, she breathes, shaking her head in frantic denial. You cannot own it. It is my home. It is my legacy. Your legacy was squandered at a blackjack table, I correct her. The document on this table is the certified deed transferring full ownership of the property to a private holding company, a holding company I completely control. For the past 2 years, you have been living in my house. The silence in the drawing room is suffocating. The sheer scale of the trap I have laid for them has finally materialized in full. They walked into this estate believing they held all power. They believed they could use counterfeit documents and fake tears to destroy my marriage and steal my company. Instead, they have systematically watched every single pillar of their lives crumble into dust. You threaten to banish me from the family home, I say, my tone dropping into a lethal whisper. You threaten to disown me and lock me out of my own history. But you do not have the authority to banish anyone, Valerie, because you are not the matriarch of a grand estate. You are a tenant. I pause, letting the absolute destruction of her ego settle deep into her bones. I am your landlord, Valerie, I declare. Chloe lets out a loud, wretched wail from the settee. Jamal buries his face in his hands. Sarah is completely motionless. They are entirely broken. The realization that they exist entirely at my mercy has broken their spirits. And as your landlord, I have one final piece of paperwork for you. I continue. I reach into my jacket pocket and extract a crisp white envelope. I toss it onto the glass table right on top of the deed. That is a formal 30-day notice of eviction, I state, projecting my voice so every person in the room hears the terms of her defeat. I am liquidating the property. You have exactly 1 month to pack whatever cheap rented possessions you have left and vacate my premises. If you are not gone by the 1st of next month, I will have the authorities forcefully remove you for trespassing. Valerie stares at the white envelope. She reaches a trembling hand toward it but cannot bring herself to touch it. She looks up at me, tears finally spilling over her eyelashes, ruining her makeup. Maya, please. She begs, her voice a broken rasp. You cannot do this. We are your family. Where will we go? We have no money. Jamal is going to lose his job. Chloe has no income. You are making us homeless. Please, I am begging you. You stopped being my family the second you walked into this room with forged documents designed to destroy my life, I reply, feeling absolutely nothing for the weeping woman in front of me. You made your choices, Valerie. You chose greed. You chose extortion. You chose to treat me as collateral damage. Now you get to live with the absolute consequences of your arrogance. I turn to the security guards who are waiting patiently by the heavy oak doors. Gentlemen, I say, my voice clear and authoritative. These people are officially trespassing. Escort them off the Thornton property immediately. If they resist in any way, call the local police and press charges for attempted extortion. The guards nod simultaneously. They move forward with practiced efficiency. 2 of them haul Jamal to his feet, ignoring his pathetic whimpers. Another guard takes Sarah by the arm, marching her toward the exit. A female security officer pulls Chloe up from the settee, physically dragging the weeping, hysterical girl across the Persian rug. Finally, the lead guard steps up to Valerie. He does not ask. He grabs her by the elbow and pulls her away from the glass table. She stumbles, her expensive shoes scraping clumsily against the floor. Maya, Valerie screams as the guard drags her toward the grand hallway. Maya, you cannot do this. I am your mother. I do not answer. I stand next to Julian, watching them disappear into the corridor. The sound of their panic echoes down the hallway, growing fainter, until the heavy front doors of the estate slam shut. The total silence that follows their dramatic departure is profoundly beautiful. It is the absolute, undeniable sound of my total victory. Valerie lets out a guttural, terrifying scream that shatters the fragile silence of the drawing room. The realization that she is completely powerless, that her grand legacy has been legally pulled out from under her feet by the daughter she despised, breaks her final tether to sanity. She does not just protest, she loses her mind entirely. Valerie lunges at me in a blind, unhinged rage, her hands curled into physical claws, her face distorted into a mask of pure, rabid hatred. She wants to physically tear the truth away from me, to strike me down right in front of the billionaire family she was trying to impress. Before she can cross the expanse of the Persian rug, and before Julian can even step fully in front of me to block her path, the heavy oak doors of the drawing room swing open with the force of a thunderclap. 4 fully uniformed police officers step firmly inside the room. Their hands rest instinctively on their heavy utility belts, their expressions hardened and strictly professional. They form a solid, impenetrable wall of blue and black right inside the doorway. Valerie freezes mid-lunge, her hands dropping limply to her sides as the universal symbol of legal authority suddenly enters the space. The air leaves the room. The absolute shock on the faces of my family members is profound. Vivian Thornton stands up slowly from her plush armchair. The icy, untouchable, aristocratic facade she has worn all afternoon instantly evaporates into thin air. She smooths the front of her designer skirt and walks over, standing directly beside me. She places a warm, fiercely reassuring hand on my shoulder, projecting an image of absolute, unbreakable solidarity. She was never against me. You did perfectly, Maya Vivian says, her voice completely devoid of its previous coldness. It is filled with deep maternal warmth and profound respect. She turns her gaze to my stunned family. The warmth vanishes, replaced by a gaze so sharp it could cut diamonds. You honestly believed you could walk into my private home and manipulate me? Vivian asks Valerie, her tone shifting to absolute, unyielding steel. You thought I would blindly accept unverified, highly suspicious documents from a frantic, gate-crashing woman making wild accusations about my future daughter-in-law. Vivian gestures to the room around us. Julian and I knew about your impending arrival the precise moment your leased vehicle cleared our front security gates. We orchestrated this entire meeting. We wanted you exactly right here, standing in a room full of our most powerful legal advisors, our corporate stakeholders, and our integrated security cameras. We gave you the stage to hang yourselves with your own malicious words. The moment you physically handed me those forged federal bank documents, you crossed from civil harassment into federal jurisdiction. I signaled my security team to contact the authorities exactly 10 minutes ago. The lead police officer steps forward into the center of the drawing room. He pulls a folded stack of warrants from his jacket. Valerie, Chloe. Sarah and Jamal, the officer, announces, his voice booming with undeniable authority. We have active warrants for your immediate arrest. The charges include wire fraud, criminal extortion, uttering forged documents, and conspiracy to commit corporate sabotage. Please step forward and place your hands behind your backs. The panic that erupts is absolute and pathetic. Jamal drops heavily to his knees, right on the antique rug, begging the officers for leniency, screaming wildly that he is a certified public accountant and cannot possibly go to federal prison. Sarah tries to push past a female officer, hyperventilating heavily, claiming she has a severe medical condition that requires her immediate release. Chloe just shrieks a high-pitched, continuous sound of pure terror that grates on the ears of every person present. One of the officers grabs Valerie by the wrist. She tries to yank her arm away, her face flushing with indignant rage, but the officer is firm. He swiftly turns her around and snaps a pair of cold steel handcuffs onto her wrists. The metallic click echoes sharply through the grand room, a sound of absolute finality. Valerie looks back at me over her shoulder, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelieving shock. As she stands there, her hands tightly bound behind her back, I retrieve a crisp white envelope from the inside pocket of my blazer. I step forward, closing the distance between us. I slip the envelope directly into the front pocket of her expensive coat. Since you slapped the landlord at Thanksgiving, consider this your immediate 30-day notice of eviction. I tell her, my voice unwavering and completely devoid of pity. And just so you are entirely aware of the timeline, my demolition crew is tearing that house down next month. We are clearing the entire lot to build a state-of-the-art community center for at-risk youth. Your precious legacy is going to be a parking lot for a public charity. Valerie lets out a strangled, breathless gasp. Her knees buckle underneath her, but the strong grip of the police officer holds her upright. She is completely incapable of forming a coherent response. The police secure the rest of the group and begin marching them toward the exit. Chloe and Sarah are led out sobbing hysterically. Their expensive counterfeit designer clothes are heavily wrinkled and stained with sweat. Thick black rivers of ruined mascara stream down their faces, completely destroying their carefully curated fake aesthetics. Jamal follows them, his head hanging in total crushing defeat. The heavy oak doors close behind them with a solid thud, permanently sealing their fate and removing their toxic presence from my life. We jump forward exactly 1 year. The noise of my toxic biological family is entirely gone. 12 months have passed, and the absolute silence they left behind has been the most beautiful restorative symphony of my entire life. The justice system moved swiftly and without mercy. Chloe and Sarah avoided federal prison, but are currently serving 5 years of heavily monitored probation. To pay off the massive court-ordered financial restitution, they owe my crisis management firm. They are both working grueling minimum-wage menial labor jobs. Chloe's delusion of a glamorous influencer lifestyle died the exact second her miserable mugshot went viral across every social media platform. She now spends her days sweeping floors and folding clothes in a harsh, brightly lit discount retail store, her wages aggressively garnished by the state. Sarah was permanently stripped of all her professional credentials and currently works a grueling night shift at a fast food drive-thru. Jamal lost his accounting license permanently and is currently navigating his own separate federal trial for corporate wire fraud. Valerie was completely and publicly expelled from the high society circles she so desperately craved. True to my word, my demolition crews tore the family home down to the very foundation. The land is now a thriving community center. Valerie currently lives in a tiny, cramped, subsidized apartment on the far outskirts of the city, utterly alone with her bitterness and her memories of a kingdom she destroyed with her own hands. I am standing on the sweeping marble balcony of the new luxury estate Julian and I designed and built together. The sun is just beginning to set over the horizon, casting a brilliant array of bright gold, deep violet, and soft crimson across the surface of the private lake bordering our expansive property. I am wearing a custom, heavily embroidered silk wedding dress. The long, flawless train pools perfectly on the smooth white stone beneath my feet. The evening air is warm and smells faintly of blooming jasmine and fresh rain. I hear the quiet sound of footsteps behind me. I feel strong, familiar arms wrap gently around my waist. Julian pulls me back against his chest, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to my bare shoulder. "We did it," he murmurs, his voice a deep, comforting rumble against my skin. Our guests are waiting downstairs for the reception. I lean back into his warm embrace, resting my head against him as I look out over the vast, beautiful expanse of our new home. The estate is filled with people who genuinely love and support us. I close my eyes, taking a deep, unrestricted breath of the clean night air. The heavy, suffocating weight of my past has been completely lifted. I am no longer the scapegoat. I am no longer the punching bag for a family of parasites who only viewed me as a resource to be drained. I am the architect of my own peace. The ultimate lesson here is that sharing DNA does not give anyone the right to abuse, manipulate, or disrespect you. True family is built on mutual respect and unconditional support, not extortion or toxic control. When the people who are supposed to protect you become your greatest source of pain, your most powerful revenge is simply walking away and building your own fiercely independent life. You are the architect of your own peace, and you never need to apologize for protecting your empire. Have you ever had to cut off toxic relatives? Share your story in the comment section below.